we'll quietly get towards it. Thank you, mate. Okay, all good?
Yes. Yep.
Right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the council meeting for the 1st of November. Christmas just around the corner. Please join me in standing for the opening karakia. Go, Sarah.
Whakatata te whakatata te tonga. Kia mātara ki tai. E teo, e luka, e ho.
Thank you very much. External recognition, excuse me, for council services. I'd just like to acknowledge what we've got here. Before we get the meeting started, I'd like to acknowledge some of the works of our parks team. Eco Action Trust is an organisation that works with 25 schools to raise and plant native seedlings in different parts of the city. They do a great job. And last week, the Deputy Mayor attended the Trust's awards, which acknowledged the leadership and hard work that the schools put in. They also took time to acknowledge Andrew Rutledge and the Parks team for their support in finding appropriate sites with logistics and with lots of mulch and seedlings and stuff like that to have the best chance to thrive. It is great to see the community and schools and councils collaborating for a fantastic outcome for the city. So well done, Andrew and team. If you could come up, please.
I don't think Andrew's here, man.
And he's not here.
Unusually.
So
we're trying to track him down.
Yeah. Okay. I have this lovely certificate to give him. That's right. If you like, would you like to do that, Jake?
I suggest if we can't, we do it in the tea break.
We're doing a tea break.
Yeah.
So well done, Andrew and Parks team, because I've worked with the Eco Action guys, and they do a fantastic job. They really, really do.
And they were so full of praise for them.
Yeah, they really get all the schools together, and it's good. Right. Apologies. An apology from Councillor Scandrett for absence, and we have for lateness Councillor Henstock, Councillor Donovan, and on Zoom we have Councillor Harrison Hunt, Councillor Goff, and Councillor Kewen. So could I have a mover for those? Thank you, Pauline. The seconder is Councillor Timper. Pardon me? Oh, yeah. I am going away for a very short time to open the new Monopoly board game in Christchurch. So I'll be gone at about 10 o'clock for about half an hour, and Councillor Cotter will sit here and look after you all. So
I'll be a partial absence as well, depending on how long the meeting goes for, but in the afternoon, yep.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. No problem. So with that, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried.
Seconder.
Yeah, I had the seconder, Sarah. Yep. Right, declarations of interest. We have no declarations of interest, so we'll move on to our community board presentations. First up is Spraden Cashmere Heathcote, and would Callum and Kia like to come to the table, please? There's Callum. I can't hear him.
No, I can't hear him.
Okay. All right, tēnā koutou katoa. Thanks for welcoming us back again today. So I'm here speaking on behalf of the Waihoro Spraden Cashmere Heathcote Community Board. Here we go. Wrong device. Just to cover off some of the things we've been talking about at our board. So we've had the Hillmorton High School robotics team was sponsored by a board to go to Texas for the Robotics World Champs. They did really well. They represented our school, our city, our country at an event that's not often seen by our community board. So they came back to the board to show us the robot that they built, which was quite an unusual and fun board meeting. The Redcliffe Tennis Club have come to our board regarding looking for a new location for their tennis courts. They have actually showed interest in some of the red zone land around the Port Hills, the base of the Port Hills. Friends of Addington Park have come to talk about activating Addington Park to make it safer and more user-friendly for local children and families, and they've got some really great simple ideas, including fencing off between the playground and Barrington Street. And Spraydon Tennis and Kedidoo clubs approached the board regarding getting set up with fibre to provide a better service for their communities. I guess a big topic I wanted to talk about today is the Port Hills red zone land. So significant action, comparing, say, to the Avon or Takaro River Corridor red zone land, where there was significant action taken and consultation taken around the way that land would be disposed of. We're not really seeing a similar approach here with this land, and although the land here is not contiguous like the Avon River Corridor, it is accompanied by a lot of community expectation. So what we're here today to ask for is a kind of a bit of a big picture overview of what should be done with this land, including community consultation. That might include, the land potentially being sold back to previous owners, or opportunities being given to the community for alternative uses before disposal. Even without the council advertising, they've received 2 or 3 inquiries a week have come into the council around different parcels of this land being used by the community. So we know that even without a consultation process, that there is a huge amount of interest in the community around what's being done with this land. We've been waiting to hear for some years now about the process by which the community will be involved in that. There has been action within council to identify any land that's of interest to council units, but to date there's just been no comprehensive conversation held with the community at all. I guess for us this is a bit of a concern for us from a reputational risk to council. The current LTP budget is currently contingent on land sales from these parcels of land, and in principle, our board doesn't oppose that at all. Some of this land will be sold. It's not council's business to be owning prime real estate up in the Port Hills. But what we're worried about is the fact that there's been no process, is that the community will miss out on opportunities to either potentially have first dibs if they're a previous owner or neighbours wanting to purchase adjacent property, for example, there's a property in Redcliffs with a big sign on it that just says stolen land. So there's a lot of high emotion around some of this property, and we're worried that by slipping it into a larger LTP process, it can essentially go through, not deliberately, but under the radar and not be noticed in the way that it should. And that's, I guess, asking for resentment and trouble. So we would like to see that this consultation process is decoupled from the LTP, and that it's held as a separate project that the community gets a chance to be involved in more comprehensively, and potentially even just delaying by 1 year so that we can have these conversations. The next annual plan might be sufficient. Also, big thanks to the outcome around the rebuild of the South Library. You're really excited for this to be continuing. It's great to have some continuity for the team working on the project. And we also know there's been a big process with Mana Whenua, who are really invested in this as well. So we're glad that council is trucking on. And I think I'm running out of time, but I'll put up on the screen there, and a huge thanks to our community governance team for all the work they've done for us in the last year. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Spot on time. Thank you. Yes. Okie doke. Nick, we have Papua New Innis Central. Emma and Simon both here. Yep, great. Welcome.
Kia ora
koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. We're going to give you a quick rundown on what's been happening in our Waipapa Papanui in a central area over the past month. So first up, at our October meeting, we approved road names for the next stage of the Oakbridge subdivision on Hawkins Road, as well as the installation of an irrigation system in Melvin Park by the Canterbury Rugby Football Union. We approved some timed parking restrictions on Cashel Street and Cambridge Terrace and formalised the mobility parking at the Graham Condon Centre, and granted funding to Aratapu Preschool for the Whānau Hub Emotional Regulation Programme.
In our October meeting, we heard from Sander Creek, who is the new incoming manager at the Phillipstown Community Hub. He gave us a rundown on the activities of the hub and raised with us again the long-term issue that the hub has been talking to us about, which is the security of tenure for that organisation to have a long-term secure base in that Phillipstown community. That's something that Community Board is continuing to work with the hub to support, especially in their discussions with Ministry of Education over the future of the site that they're on right now. We also heard from Rodora Sagles and Joe Arbuckle, who are reporting back on activities of Birthright Canterbury Trust. Birthright's kaupapa is to support single-parent families. They've been doing that for many decades now. They have staff in Christchurch and also in Ashburton, and have been recipients of support from our Community Board. And finally, we heard from local resident promoting Biketober to us, which of course has just finished, and raising some issues around signage on one of our local roads.
One of our board projects for this year was to offer a Rangatahi Civic Award for schools to present. We have had 8 schools in the area take us up on the offer, with the first award presented a couple of weeks ago to Leah McCullum from Papanui High. We gave the schools some guidance on criteria for the awards, with a focus on civic awareness and community contribution, but left them to tailor it to their school. Our board members are looking forward to presenting the other awards at the end-of-year ceremonies in the coming weeks.
This past month, we had an event at McFarlane Park Centre, or we attended it. It was a gifting and thankfulness event to recognise the handing over of the McFarlane Park Centre building, which was originally gifted by Lions for use in St Albans, transferred to McFarlane Park, and now in the ownership of the Shirley Community Trust. So we had a tree planting there. There's a new mural in the background of one of those photos as well that we all had the opportunity to admire, and just acknowledging elected members who went along, and as well as council staff, as you can see pictured there, to recognise that occasion.
The Great Library Plant and Seed Swap was held at the Papanui Library last month, and as usual it was very successful. This amazing display welcomed residents to bring along their leftover seeds, seedlings and plants to share with the community. There were vegetable, herb, flower, native and heritage seeds available, along with spot prizes. It's a great way for people to learn about gardening, and we're really grateful to the support from local businesses, Maita 10 Mega, Ray White Papanui, as well as McGregor's Seeds and Yates Seeds.
Back at McFarlane Park, during the October school holidays, we had an event, Shirley Hoops and Hangs, which was run in collaboration between Council, Kia Kore Waitaha, Shirley Community Trust. Kia Kore Waitaha is a collaboration between a number of sports organisations and the 9 organisations that make up the Northwest Collective of community organisations. So really great to see all those organisations coming together and supporting an event. There was haircutting, braiding, DJ, 3-on-3 basketball tournament and more.
One of the priorities in our Community Board plan is around mitigating the impacts of intensification in our board area, of which enhancing green space and planting trees is a vital part. There's been a lot going on in this space over the last wee while, with Paparoa Street school pupils continuing their mahi in the Rutland Reserve, that middle photo there. They've been working with our park rangers in this wetland area for several years now, and it's great to see these young people getting hands-on in their local community and becoming kaitiaki for the reserve. The first community planting day was held at Lancaster Park recently, which is one of the parks prioritised under the Urban Forest Plan. The focus for the day was on the southwest corner of the park, with a range of native plants including sedges, rushes and flax planted. And then also there we have a photo of one of our edible and sustainable garden awards being presented to the Phillipstown Community Centre Charitable Trust for their amazing community garden.
And last slide, so Papanui Rotary Club celebrated its 65th anniversary recently. Councillor Henstock was involved in that event. Something that came out of that, as well as conversations with other organisations, is feedback we're hearing that some community organisations that are highly reliant on volunteers to sort of outwork their kaupapa, finding it a little bit more difficult now to recruit younger members. And we're just, as a board, we're just giving some thought to what we might be able to do to support organisations in their efforts to reach new volunteers, and wondering too if there's a role perhaps even for council there as well, in a no-cost way, maybe just through council communication channels to help promote organisations that are doing work in our community through volunteers and might be seeking to recruit volunteers.
That's us.
Thank you very much. That was a very colourful presentation. Those great photos. We've got time for a few questions, if any. Pauline, Councillor Cotter.
Thank you. Just an additional comment to the reference to the Shirley Trust taking ownership of the little transitional centre. So that's another example of a community running a facility instead of the council. So it saves us money, and it's just such a better outcome for the community, and pretty cool. So we've now got Kuinga in St Albans and Shirley, two centres being run by the community really, really successfully, and the St Albans Residents Association is also seeking to run the Everleigh Park Hall, which is another little one we have. So I'm hoping that there's progress on that coming up, because it actually saves council a lot of money. So it's brilliant. Yeah.
Well done. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have Horswell Holmby Rickerton with Helen and Marie, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. We've got the full photo there, but I'll go over to reports to the board. We had a notice of motion on Denton Park trees that went through. There's quite a lot of ugly old pines at the edge of Denton Park, which are affecting and have affected residents for a long time. So Mark Peters moved the notice of motion, and we're hoping you'll have a look at that during the long-term plan process. So it's recommending they be taken down in a staged way, but during the long-term plan process. Proposed road names: Awatere Road and Mary Carpenter Avenue. Horswell local play spaces. That was brought to us. There's 4 local spaces in Horswell. We let this lie on the table to do further consultation with the community. They were really putting the effort into 2 parks and leaving the others as natural parks, if in fact I can simplify that. So there's some further discussion about that. Hawk Avenue, again, proposed no stopping restrictions. In the discretionary response fund, just a range of agencies there. In the youth development fund, just pointing out a range of people. We've got 1 person going to the Hockey Junior Youth Cup, and 1 or 2 people are participating in the Australia Deaf Games. So it's really exciting, I think, to have people going overseas for sport or other activities. We had our forum, and we've got quite interesting issues at that forum. Claire Mulcock, the Deans Avenue Precinct Society person, outlined issues and concerns regarding the vacant former Addington Saleyard site, and considers there has been a lack of coordination between parties interested in the maintenance of the area. So we'll look further at that. It's a large area. It's been unused for many years, since at least 1995. We haven't been able to get much action on it from the owner, but he has lodged a resource consent, which has been approved. So if he proceeds with that, there'll be a range of apartments in that area, which will be highly welcomed. But it is a problem in terms of maintenance, and people are using the site for sleeping, basically, and living. So it's difficult. The Selwyn District Traffic, David Hawke, Horswell Residents Associations, and John Bennett spoke to us regarding the volume of traffic travelling from the Selwyn district through to the City Council via Wincops Road, Horswell. This is an ongoing issue, very, very predictable. The chairperson of that community board and myself will meet to have a look at ways forward. The Denton Park trees, we had a deputation on that from a long-standing resident, and I've touched on that. And I think that's
So,
the end
I'll
for
give
me.
you a
Thank you.
progress on our community board plan priorities. Last month, September 12th, we launched a very, our Rickerton Collective launch with a very good turnout, and this was facilitated by our very own councillor Harrison Hunt with the support of our very capable community governance staff. And this collective, Rickerton Collective, is an initiative aimed at fostering a stronger, safer, and more connected community in Rickerton. We've also produced the community picnic kit, which is available to lend out to the community free of charge, which would cater for up to 60 people. And this is a way of reducing costs and waste at community gatherings, such as the summer with neighbor events. The Huratini Council earlier this year showed a video produced by the Huratini Council, which is comprised of about 6 to 7 schools from Holswell. And so they've been actively promoting this Drive Safely for Our Safety throughout the year. And they've continued to deliver this throughout the Holswell schools. Bumper stickers sharing the message have been handed out and can be spotted around town. The Huratini Council members have been outside schools rewarding drivers, showing safe driving behavior and remaining patient during the busy drop-off and pickup time periods. And lastly, the Matatiki Hornby Center team member roles. Recruitment is underway for about 50 new roles at the Matatiki Hornby Center. And so a number of information and application support sessions have been held to help community learn about these opportunities and training support available. And that's it from us.
And I think I've forgotten an issue that you're debating later.
Part A.
Hayton and Wigram Road. If I could just touch on it, because I don't think we'll be able to stop for this. There's 2 issues. You're voting on the cycleway, and I don't think that's any difficulty. There was some contention at the board as to whether we had a speed table as well as traffic lights. The board voted on that to have the speed table there. It was the majority view, I think 5-2, but I don't think that is before council this morning.
That's correct.
So I think all your vote, because that's a Part C item, so it's the Part A item, which is the cycleway, which the board has no trouble with at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. Good on you. Okie doke. So next we have Coastal Buoywood Linwood with Paul and Jackie. Welcome.
Tēnā koutou katoa. First, we'll just touch on a few highlights from the board area. We recently, the whole board, including councillors, met with representatives from Avonside girls and Shirley boys after it was raised at our principals' breakfast that there were some safety concerns with the path that goes from Kiwi to Pool, Taiora, through the school to Travis Road. And there's concern about that because it basically encourages people to come right through the middle of the school. So staff were present with us, and so we're going to try and work through that issue with the schools.
Good morning, everyone. Linwood Girls Group is something that I'm really keen on. It caters to girls from local primary schools, and I'd love to see this expanded. Currently, it caters to 20 primary age girls from local schools in Linwood with a waiting list of 9. And one of the things I really like about this, it does encourage personal development in the girls. It's not all about crafts and sport. So yeah, really would like to see this initiative expanded. That's it.
There was an awesome event, the Parkinson's Whānau Fun and Games Night on the 17th of October at the Pukeko Centre with several whānau from students at Parkview Pārua School who had designed a whānau friendly event. And the event was supported by the Pukeko Centre, the Queen's Park Community Trust and the Council. Great collaboration there with awesome community groups.
Now we have an up and coming event in the Woolston Village. We're having a twilight gala to celebrate the leasing of the community centre behind the library to Youthtown. Now this is an area in Woolston that has had ongoing concerns with an unsavoury element in the car park with begging and homeless people. So Youthtown moving into this facility is just brilliant for Woolston. And
fantastic.
Having this, we have had some resistance from a few members of the community, but I think having this event combined Youthtown with Council to celebrate this and to coordinate with the community to see how they're going to use it going forward is going to be brilliant. And that's on the 28th of November from 4 till 7:30. So you're all welcome.
Yeah, look forward to seeing you all there.
Yeah.
Just to finish off, the organics processing plant is still there and it still stinks. It needs to close. It's coming into high pong season where there'll be a lot of grass clippings. We just want to remind you that it has been 14 years and this community was told for 2/3 of that there was no problem. This has sown massive distrust and that has been further compounded by the poor handling of the wastewater treatment plant fire. Sorting these two issues, the organics processing plant and the wastewater treatment plant, as well as completing earthquake legacy projects, should be a top priority for the Council. The Council as an institution needs to commit itself to, as the independent report into the response to the fire says, prioritising, strengthening and sustaining effective and respectful relationships with Eastside communities so as to regain their trust and confidence. The review suggested that as part of the 2024 LTP process, the Council should consider specifically engaging with the communities in the eastern suburbs. When will this happen? The improvement plan only cites what is happening in every ward. What will be done to engage the east specifically? And to be frank, our community board doesn't have the information we need yet to be able to provide meaningful input into the LTP process. The independent review recommended that Council develop a relationship management strategy for the east. We support this being co-developed with the local community and key partners in our community board, as the improvement plan process says. The start of this, I suggest, is for the CE to meet with the community board and to decide together how to proceed, listening deeply and intently to the people we represent. We will need to be put in place a structured process from the outset, focused on gathering and addressing the needs and concerns of the community and prioritising them, followed by community mapping, stakeholder analysis, inclusive stakeholder analysis, and engagement, local leadership involvement, and coordination with key stakeholders. This isn't something that will happen in 6 months. It will take years. The improvement plan, the relationship management strategy, and the incident management teams, they will all need work plans and funding in the LTP, or they will not happen. You know, it was only 20 years ago that the Christchurch City Council was the best governed city in the world. You know, in 2003, we last received that award, and we can be that again. I suggest that the road back to that starts here with working with the Eastside community.
Thank you. All good. Right, we do have some time for a 1 or 2 questions if anyone wants one. No, you must have done a fantastic job. Thank you very much. And item 12 is coming up later on today with the independent reviews.
Cool.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Peninsula. Lynn and Penelope, please.
Morena.
Hello again.
Once again, it's my pleasure to update you on what has been happening this month in Te Pātaka o Rākau Hautu. Thanks, Peninsula. We are minus one person from that picture that you can see there of our team this week as we said a sad goodbye to Ruben as he goes on to the bright lights in the big city of Wellington as an MP for Christchurch East. We will miss him. Community funding had one application for the Youth Development Fund this month. We love supporting local young people to gain experience in areas of their passion. Like Julia, who applied for this fund, she'll be attending a dance tour in New York and Orlando, and that just sounds amazing. Such a great opportunity for them. A decision was made to support our reserve committees by extending the deadline on special conditions. Peninsula Reserve Committees are such a great example of how the people on the ground can support their community by committing to a place for the betterment of those around them. I acknowledge their commitment and thank the staff for their ongoing support in this process. Also, the Community Board agreed to include the Purau Residents Association in the Head-to-Head Walkway Working Party membership. Moving forward well. With glad hearts, the Board continues to see healthy progress on our Community Board plan priorities. This month, around Priority E, good social and physical connections, through our support of Littleton Recreation Ground Reserve Committee, who are discussing the exciting new layout of the field and the concept plan for the Change Pavilion. All very good stuff. In our community engagement section, a grant provided by Chrissy Trust towards running the summer season of hydrosize sessions and allowing the balance classes to continue. It's such great programs. Community of focus, it was the shining brightness amongst the great events held regularly on Banks Peninsula is the Akaroa French Fest. Such a buzz was created in the village that they are still riding the wave of enthusiasm as we speak now. That's right. The Akaroa French Fest beautifully celebrates the unique and cherished heritage of Akaroa, with live music, incredible food, and a showcase of the arts illustrating the richness that Banks Peninsula offers. A particular highlight, The Landings, is performed on the beach, which tells the story from the first people, Waitaha, right through to the arrival of the French. Everyone in the community is invited to take part and be part of the Akaroa French Festival in some way, and they have helpers ranging from the school kids through the local clubs who provide the labour. It's an ever-evolving and growing event that honours and celebrates our unique place in the motu and in our time in history. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say I was at French Fest, and it's every 2 years, and this year I believe they had just over 700 tickets sold. So if anyone wants to get into it, not next year, the year after, get along there, and you may even see an idiot like me trying to dance can on the stage, which was very pleased that didn't go on Facebook. But it was a fantastic event. The quality of the performers was, not me, outstanding. So thank you once again.
Great. I will pass that on to those involved. Thank
Very
you
well
for
done.
that.
Very well done.
Appreciate it.
It's something the council would like to continue to support, Mr. Mayor.
Apparently, yes. I knew I'd get it. Thank you, Tora. Okay, so lastly, we have Fendleton Waimari Harewood, and it's just Bridget today. Thank you.
Morena, everyone. So, kia ora. So, first up, with what's been happening in the Waimero Fendleton Waimari Harewood Community Board this month is a range of decisions were made under delegation, from no stopping restrictions to approving discretionary response fund applications to youth development fund applications as well. And then as part of our locally run speaker series, our community governance team recently facilitated a mental health hui for our local community groups. This hui was a follow-up to the Navigating the Mental Health Sector workshop that was held last year. A number of local groups report that they are seeing an increase in the number of people coming to their organisations for support who have mental health issues and in some cases quite complex needs. Our local groups don't always have the capacity to provide the necessary support these people may need, so they are keen to engage with community organisations who provide the services that they could refer people to. Speakers on the day included Step Ahead Trust, Youthline, He Waka Tapu, Stepping Stone Trust, and Te Mana Ora. There are really good discussions between the participants during the breaks, and we've had really positive feedback from the event. The hui was live streamed and recorded and can be accessed on our board's YouTube channel. Disc golf has taken off as a really popular recreation activity across the city. Our course at Jolly Park is extremely well utilised, with anywhere between 300 and 500 participants playing on Sunday. The benefits of disc golf include improving physical health and well-being, providing upper and lower body conditioning and aerobic exercise. Players of limited fitness levels can start slowly and gradually increase their level of play as their fitness improves. As a result of the large number of players, the club identified a number of baskets in need of refurbishment or repair. Our board was pleased to be able to support them with this by providing some funding through our discretionary response fund. As they remove the damaged baskets, new baskets will take their place so as not to impact on the course usage. We wanted to take this opportunity to introduce you to a new group that has been established in our board area. The Asian Community Transformation Trust is focused on providing support to local community, particularly in the areas of mental well-being, children, youth and families, community services, and research and education. One of their recently launched initiatives is a monthly family forum, which aims to provide education, information, and a strong sense of community in the Mandarin-speaking community. During the months of June and July this year, their events attracted 220 adults and 60 children. They have a strong and dedicated volunteer base of around 27 people. Our local development advisor, Karen Bogue, has been supporting the group through their initial startup phase and continues to provide advice and planning support. Our board was pleased to be able to provide operational funding to them through our recent Strengthening Communities funding round. And of course, it's that time of year again to save the date. Our annual Celebrate Bishopdale event will be taking place on the 25th of November at Bishopdale Park. This is a great family-friendly event with free activities for children and wonderful stage performances from local groups. At the same time, we will also be hosting our Bishopdale Skate Jam at the recently upgraded Skate Bowl at Bishopdale Park. This event continues to attract a large number of young people who get the opportunity to have a go and learn new skills. This event is run in partnership with the skate school team. So pop the date in your calendar now, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for letting us present this report today.
Thank you very much, Bridget. That was really good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Right. Thank you to all the boards for their presentations. I'll now ask for a mover, which is Jake, and a second, which is Sarah. To receive the monthly reports for the community boards. All those in favour? Against? Oh, certainly, yes. I thought you were seconding.
I did. Just a comment on Callum's presentation for our community board, in that next month, because the timing of the meetings doesn't work out so well, there was a slide there that talked to some board recommendations on the Port Hills properties. And next month there will be a part A, but Callum was talking to it now to give us a heads up. So for many, many years now, since the earthquakes, the communities that live along the Port Hills and probably in Whakaropo, Littleton Harbour as well, that have been red zoned, have waited for a process by which the communities can help have input into what happens with that land. There are over 600 properties. If they were all contiguous, it would make up, a decent sized suburb that was red zoned along the Avon Otakaro River corridor. That area, of course, had a really large community engagement process to work out what was going to happen to that land. And the communities across the Port Hills had been told that that would eventually happen for them. And in fact, we did have some very early initial conversations when Ivan Iafeta was even in charge sort of involved at Sarah back in the very old days. But what has recently come up is a list of sort of 80 odd properties to be sold without that broader conversation about the group of properties. And so our board's really keen to have a holistic consultation that looks at all of those properties as one, with maybe a council staff recommendation on which ones could or should be sold, which ones should be revegetated, and the wider community can have their say on that as a holistic plan before any properties get sold. And so that's coming up as a Part A next meeting, but councillors want to take that into account as we're doing our long-term plan, draft planning and stuff as well. So thanks.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. So I will now put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you, that's carried. You got it, Katie? You all good? Yes. Okie dokie. So now we move on to public participation. I'd first like to welcome Claire Newman to the table, who will provide an update on the Share Kai and Korero project. Welcome. Oh, you've got a friend.
Wonderful, thank you. Great. So going to rattle through this and hopefully leave some time for questions at the end. So kia ora tātou, ko Claire Newman tōku ingoa, and this is my colleague Holly, and together we are here to talk to you about Share Kai today. We're going to start by saying thank you. Thank you to the City Council for supporting Share Kai over the past year. We are a collaboration between Mahia Te Araha and In Common. Both these organisations arose out of the response to March 15th. Mahia Te Araha has been founded by members of the Muslim community and invites us to action the compassion. In Common has been founded by the wider community and invites us to look at our commonalities as opposed to our differences. Together, we're creating spaces for connection where people can connect and participate with people from different backgrounds, share and learn about each other and people from different cultures. The Share Kai initiative is really proud to support 14 cooks from ethnic minorities communities. It's these cooks that provide the food, and they are our biggest stars. We provide livelihood opportunities for the cooks, and we also provide opportunities for them to deepen and widen their engagement in the broader community. So we do this through creating events. They might be food truck style pop-up events, they might be catering with culture, or it might be as simple as sharing a table at Riverside, which some of you have joined us at previously. But we bring in intentionality to our events. It's not just about sharing delicious food, it's about connecting, and we do this with our connection cards and our conversation nudges. So with the support of City Council, in our first 6 months of the year, we were able to host 1,400 participants to our events. We generated more than $22,000 of income that went directly to the cooks. We broke bread with Crusaders. And more recently, in the last 2 weeks, we've been able to secure funding and donations from the public to fund over 500 meals for families and friends going through the coronial inquiry. So we do have a natural alignment to City Council's multicultural strategy, and we draw on the research that you've conducted in the past 10 years. Essentially, we're inviting people to become active participants so we can create a society where everybody feels they belong. Partnerships have really underpinned our approach, and it's no exaggeration to say the partnership with the City Council has been integral to our success to date. You've provided us with some seed funding, you've helped us navigate systems, provided us networks, and you're some of our biggest supporters. And we're really looking forward to being early adopters of the Multicultural Centre next year. So this has enabled us to unlock some multi-year funding from 10 national funders. They see what we're doing here in Christchurch and they really want to support the work that we're doing. This will enable us to deepen and widen in Christchurch, and it will enable us to scale nationally. The next slide is some quotes, which I won't read out to you. I'll leave you to read through those by yourselves. But I just want to finish by saying thank you very much for the support that you've given us over the past year, and we're looking forward to deepening and widening the partnership going forward.
Thank you, Claire. Well done. Any questions from anybody? We've got a minute and a half if you want to.
Kia ora, and thanks so much for the work you're doing. The work that's currently happening with the helping to provide food for those involved in the inquiry, I'm just wondering if you wanted to elaborate on that a bit and let people know how they can help by donating to help that happen. Thanks.
Kia ora. Yes, so we have an appeal out that's an ability for the public or anyone to contribute towards those meals. So the idea is that gives the wider community a chance to show their manaakitanga to the community. There aren't that many avenues during the coronial inquiry this time around to show, that compassion from all of us to the community. After March 15, we laid flowers at the tribute wall, we cooked meals, we did a lot of things, but this time round, this is an avenue that we've kind of seen that people could utilise. So they can donate through the Open Collective website, and that money goes directly towards meals. And so far, from individual donations, we've received enough to fund more than 500 meals. They'll be provided weekly to the community. And our Shekai cooks, the Afghan group of cooks, will be making those halal meals.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okey-doke. So next we'll hear from Don Elder, who is here to tell us about the loft and the services it provides to the community. Thank you, Don.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Don Elder, aho. Nice to see some of you again. I've worked, lived and played in Christchurch, Aotearoa most of my life, including with a number of you. I'm proud to be from Christchurch, and many of you know that I don't hesitate to speak up for things that matter, and this is one of those times. A little bit of background, I'm on a number of commercial boards around the country, and this is relevant because of what I'm doing here today. I've been on the board of Orion and LPC, and it's been a privilege to serve Christchurch through doing my bit on those boards. I chair and boards of startups, and I'm a mentor for a number of people. I'm chair of the Family Help Trust in Christchurch. I'm chair of the Canterbury Clinical Network, which has helped the Canterbury health system become the best health system in the country. But I'm not here with any of those today. I'm bringing that experience. I'm here today as a trustee of the Loft, which is based in Eastern Christchurch. And I brought David Mates, who was also, of course, well known to you. He's the chair of the Loft, and he apologises he can't be here today. I want to talk to you about where we are, and I want to go back to March 2011. Where something really riled me as it would have riled you. A bureaucrat from Wellington said, Christchurch doesn't matter. Christchurch doesn't matter. And that caused me, and I had a pretty busy life, to step up and say, to hell with that. So I worked with a number of you. It caused me to step up and do a whole lot of stuff to work for Christchurch, because Christchurch did matter. It caused me to do a whole range of things that took time, and I think I can look back now and say we and many others made a difference. So somebody saying to me Christchurch doesn't matter is the wrong thing to say, and that happened again recently. The Loft was established by a group of us back in 2016, and it's a unique model in New Zealand. There are a couple of other models like it. But what we said is there's a better way to deliver social services. There's a more economic way, there's a more efficient way, there's a better way to help not the people in this room, but the most vulnerable people in our community. The people who in the next generation will be defining as a problem. The people who tomorrow will be defining as a problem. Because I look around this room, and if any of you has maybe a heart attack or an accident, or comes off your mountain bike, or a Yanni has an accident on the football field or whatever, you know where to go. You go to the emergency department at hospital, and I've been there with you. But I want you to put yourself in this position for a moment. You live in Eastern Christchurch. You live in a rundown house that may well have been red stickered, and you're living there now. It's drafty, it's cold. You don't know how you're going to pay your food bills. Your kids are starving. You've got somebody knocking on the door, and you don't answer it because it could be the police about something you did yesterday to provide food for your kids, or it could be the landlord who wants to evict you. On top of that, you don't know where your next penny's coming from. You don't know anything about budgeting. You've got a bunch of other issues, and worse than that, your partner shows up every now and then to beat you up or beat the kids up. Put yourself in that position. Where do you go? You think, well, somebody said last week, I'll go to Aviva Family Violence, and you think, oh, that's probably a good idea. And then you realise somebody else said, you've got a budgeting issue. You need to sort that out. You need to have a crack at your gambling problem because you're always hoping that next week you'll pull the lever and suddenly your money problems will go away. You know your child's got a health problem, but they're not even enrolled. Somebody said to you, Ngaitahu, you ought to register with Ngaitahu. They provide help, but you've got an iwi connection, but it's not Ngaitahu, and you don't know that they're actually willing to help you. So you've got so many issues you don't know where to turn. 4 years ago, the Loft stepped forwards and said we need a social emergency service for that. We funded it from the partners at the Loft, the people you see there. We supported it from the partners at the Loft, but that wasn't working because that was taking money away from their front line. Ministry of Social Development stepped forward and provided $360,000 a year for 4 years, and 1,000 people a year have benefited from that. This year, in June, they told us that money's being disestablished. That social emergency department that serves 1,000 people in our community, your community, my community each year is going to have to be disestablished. We're living on the smell of an oily rag, and that will be gone. That's their problem, that's my problem, that's our problem, and it's your problem. So I'm not asking for anything today other than your knowledge and your understanding of what I see as an upcoming crisis in Christchurch, and anything you can think of doing that can help us with that will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in and speaking to us about that. We too see that as a serious item. Yanni, I'll allow one question, but we have
Quite
time.
just to let Don know that this council actually has passed a resolution to write to the minister, obviously with the change of government. We thought it was better to wait for the new minister to come in.
Yep.
So we've already passed a formal resolution to raise concern at the government's cut to the funding in support of the good work that the Loft does in our community. So just wanted to pass that on so you're aware that, we do have an action to try and support you as much as we can.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Yanni. Thank you to the council. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you. All right, I'd like to invite Matthew Reid, who's going to speak to us on item 13, the Linwood bus stop improvements report. Welcome.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for coming in.
Having heard the Loft and having heard the issues we've got with the sewage, I find it extraordinary that I received a letter in July telling me we're going to move a bus stop 20 metres. And I really wonder why we're moving it, how much is it costing, and are you people serious about the moving a bus stop 20 metres? Do we know? I mean, before you move the motion today to say, yes, we're going to do it, do we know what it's going to cost us? Do we know what the benefits long-term are? This is a question-answer session. No, never mind, we don't. This is extraordinary. So after the letter, I did go down there and I had a look and I thought, what is going on? And this is the Kiwi Family Trust outside St Asaph Street. And there is a girl sitting on the bus stop waiting. And it's not unreasonable for us to put bus shelters in. I couldn't agree more. But the design of this is putting the bus shelter at the back side of the bus stop. What, is there a reason for that? Again, I'm asking why we're doing it.
Yeah, okay, this is not a question and answer session, it's your deputation, so you finish it.
Okay.
And your local councillors can pick those questions up and ask them when the report is tabled.
Right,
so go
okay.
ahead.
Well, you're moving a motion today to move the bus stop. I find it extraordinary. I don't mind where it goes, but actually the bus stop in the picture that we were presented here, I believe is tantamount to deceptive. If you have a look at it, it looks like the bus stop's just getting moved. It's not. So I ring the council up and I ask them, how many car parks are we losing? Oh, we're not, we're gaining them. And then I get a call 2 days later saying, oh, sorry, we are losing some car parks. The whole process, I believe, is wrong. It should not have happened as it has. And I would challenge the council today not to move this motion and to go back and actually get a shelter at the start of a bus stop. the whole thing to me is quite illogical. Extraordinary. I'm quite hoping to take questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Jake and then Andre.
Thank you for coming along. Is it just the specific stop you have an issue with?
Look, I do. I find that
it's not the package of works as a whole.
Look, I think putting shelters and getting them for the community is a really good idea. It's the process of how this happened, and it's the process that I got after I'd got that letter.
Right.
And and I'm not pinpointing the employers of the council at all, but I was told to start with that this was to realign the bus stop because they want to get the distances from one bus stop to the next bus stop correct, right? And I was told to go to LTSA and have a look at the guidelines for bus stops. The guidelines for bus stops are quite clear. They should be about 400 metres, or if they're 800 metres, there's differences. These bus stops between this one and the next one's only 200 metres. So you would have to question whether you actually should have a bus stop.
We'll probe further on this one.
All these things laid me to get cross enough to come here, because I don't think it's been a very transparent process.
This work is a bit quicker than we normally pump stuff out with some government money. But thank you. We'll look closer at this one.
Well, I think if you're going to move it today and move it, it doesn't really matter. But actually, if looking at it very simply, this would be much more sensible to move it towards Fitzgerald Ave, and it sits in an area that currently looks like a vacant section. At the moment, you're moving the bus stop. It doesn't matter. There's all sorts of things that I think are extraordinary with the decision.
Okay, we've got one more question. Andre? No. Are there any other questions? Councillor Johansson?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing these concerns to our attention. I mean, as I've read the report, I was just wondering if you have a sense of how many people actually use the bus stop, because it seems like a lot of investment and we don't seem to have any idea of how many. Yeah, right.
Yeah, where's the cost benefit?
So,
I don't think anyone's using the bus stop. No, that's not fair. I cannot put quantitative figures on who uses the bus stop.
So in regards to your submission, would it be your preference that we look at, because we've had other submitters in areas where there is a high use of bus stops, who people have asked for improved bus stops there, would it be your submission that we should focus on those, responding to those ones where there's a proven need, versus addressing this one?
Yeah, you're leading the submitter because he came in to talk about this bus stop, and you're bringing another one. So.
Okay. Do you think it's a good use of our money to do this one?
I think
there's other priorities.
All I think is actually when we've got a loft that needs money and we've got a sewerage pond that needs to get sorted out, we should be stopping all of this. So
we'll be putting your questions through to the staff when we present the report.
Yeah, thank you. But you have to move the motion on that today, don't you?
Yes, but after we've asked the questions, we've got time to ask your questions.
Right. Okay.
So thanks very much.
We don't. We've got more time.
Because I just think it's illogical.
No, that's very clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, Nearby Singh, please, also on item 13. Is he here? Nearby? No. All right. So we'll go to Stephen McPake, who's on video presentations. Oh, you're here, Stephen, but you've got a video presentation. And you're speaking to item 12.
Yes.
So, welcome.
Good morning. Today you'll meet two sides of me, the level thinking Stephen and the annoyed Stephen. But first off, I want to congratulate the wastewater treatment plant team for keeping the plant operational through this horrible time. It has been a horrible 2 years for the people in the east. So first off, I'll let my video do the talking. Hello, my name is Stephen McPake. I'm a community advocate and the co-founder of Sewer Crisis. I come to you today to talk about this and your response after it. This organisation has let the community down in more ways than one. The communications were poor.
Yeah, I just feel like the board's not really being kept informed on this issue. Like, it was pretty embarrassing tonight to have members of the community know more about what's happening by council than we do, by responses. Like, you know, that people were making deputations to us, people I'm sure are contacting us on social media, and yet we basically have very little information.
Yeah, I learn more from the community groups than I do from council.
Me too.
The support package was poor. Hey, I'm just at Pack and Save Morehouse. I'm off to count cards. So I am down at Eastgate. I'm going to check Countdown, as well as the warehouse and warehouse stationery, and let's find out how many they've got on their shelf. Well, I'm in Countdown Ferrymead, and look what I've got. Many Prezi cards on the shelf. But we've learnt these lessons. This organisation's relationship with the East is described as poor at best. There are infrastructure and roading that needs to be repaired from the earthquake. Residents constantly feel like they have been not listened to and let down. What I'm asking this organisation to do is that you set up workshops for the community residents to tell you how you can build trust back in them. They want answers. They want to know who you are. They want to know what you do. They need these answers, as well as what's happening with this. For me, what I want from you is guarantees that you will not let down a single community again like you have with the eastern suburbs. So I'm going to leave it here and let you ask me any questions you want. Thank you.
Before you do, I'd like a post that Vicky Walker put up on the Sewer Crisis page, put up on the screen. She's got nothing but resentment for this building and the people who work here and our elected members. We need to change this. Frankly, I don't want to darken this council chamber coming here to have a growl. But I'm happy to take any questions now.
Oh, thank you very much, Stephen. Your time is up exactly perfectly right on now, so that we don't have time for questions for you today, but your deputation was very clear, and I think the message cannot be disputed, so thank you very much, and thank Vicky for providing that few words as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so still no new buying? Okay. Right, so we have no petitions. We'll move on to the confirmation of the previous minutes. Can I please get a mover, is that you, Mark, and seconded Councillor Tyler Hunt, for the Open and PX minutes set out as items 5, 6, 20, and the Open and PX Audit and Risk Management Committee minutes set out as items 7 and 19. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. That takes us through to the Community Board Part A reports, which is starting with item 9. Woodham Road, Gloucester Street intersection improvements. Councillor McClellan is moving, and a seconder. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Coker. Do we have staff here for this? You guys come to the table, please. Right. Just in case there's any questions on this one. Okie dokie, welcome.
Thank you.
Do you just want to give us a brief overview of the project, please?
This project's one that's being funded out of our minor safety interventions program. Involves improvements to this intersection of Gloucester Woodham. The project was brought to us by members of the community concerned about when they were turning right at the intersection and difficulty with visibility of other vehicles. So the project involves realigning the markings on the approaches so that we're able to better align the two opposing right turn bays opposite each other. We're also looking to add cycle lanes through the intersection. Involves some additional parking restrictions which have already been through the community board. And today we're here for the cycle lane.
Excellent, thank you. When you say turning right, from which direction?
All approaches.
All approaches.
The issue at the moment is that the lanes are shared through and right lanes, which creates issues with the ability of you can't see past the opposing lane particularly well, and there's opportunities for vehicles to creep up on the inside curbside lane, which is unmarked. It results in vehicles changing lanes late to avoid waiting right turners, and also creates issues for cyclists with vehicles changing lanes to the curbside lane without due consideration of cyclists behind them.
Right, thank you. All right, are there any questions for staff on this one? Does not appear. Oh, Councillor Johansson.
Thank you. A number of the submissions talk about this not being a priority and that there have been greater priorities like the Gayhurst Bridge, Avonside, Gloucester Street intersection. I was just wondering, given that that's been raised before as well, is there any work happening on addressing the safety concerns of that? I'm not aware of any particular at the moment, but we're happy to look at that. Okay.
As you said, this has been raised from the members of the community. I don't know if anything's been raised about Gayhurst from the community.
The elected members have certainly raised a community board and other processes.
Thanks. Councillor Barber?
Yeah, I wonder if you could articulate a little bit about the feedback from the businesses on the corners of this particular area around the loss of their parking and their concerns about that.
Kia ora, my name's Kieran. I was the engagement advisor for this project. So as part of this, as part of the early engagement, which was approximately 2 weeks, we went and spoke to all of the businesses around the intersection and also left letters for them to get in touch with us if they so wanted, inviting them to have meetings. But the main concerns, I guess, that were raised were parks that were, I think it's a bit hard to see with this diagram, but on the south east, as they bend around, there's quite a few parks there that businesses rely on, but those were the only parks that were commented on, and they aren't being impacted by this work. We didn't receive any feedback from the early engagement that we had on the yellow lines, both to the north, which was by I think it was Taste of India restaurant. Mainly we got comments from the board saying that the customers at those restaurants are usually longer than what is currently restricted there, which is P30s, as well as the south. there are yellow lines being proposed on the south, and that's to provide safety measures for cyclists. But we didn't receive any feedback from local businesses. Again, the main focus were the car parks that allowed people to access businesses such as bakery, fast food / dairy, which is on the corner, and some other small businesses.
Thank you. All good? Beg your pardon? Oh, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I did hear a suggestion that some of those customers could park in the BP station. That wasn't made by you guys, was it? Because generally one business wouldn't allow another business's customers to park on there. So that wasn't you guys? No. Yeah, okay. Right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? It has been moved and seconded. So is there any debate on this one? Councillor Johansson?
Thank you. I won't be supporting this. At the community board, I was particularly concerned with the short time of engagement and consultation that happened, and concerned about some of the impacts that have been raised, particularly around safety and the bend. There's a very sharp bend here that I am concerned that needs actually a much greater solution than what's been proposed. But also, if you read some of the submissions, the overwhelming sense of some of the submissions is that there's a very much more dangerous intersection just a few metres up the road that needs to be addressed. And, this has been raised, and I'm deeply concerned that this is a priority over that other intersection. So I won't be supporting this today. I think there needs to be more work done on it, and there's actually greater priorities that we have in terms of the immediate safety for people in this neighbourhood.
All right, thank you. Councillor Barber?
Yeah, I won't be supporting it either. I mean, there's lots of parts to it that I do like, but there are, the taking away the parking shows to me a lack of flexibility in engaging with the people who owned those businesses, who actually, a couple of them said that they weren't happy with losing those parks. They're the ones who are actually taking the risk and going into business. I also think that I agree with Councillor Johansson, there are other intersections, and a lot of the feedback from the people showed that they would rather see that looked at. A lot of people also said that they don't understand why this is even being looked at, this particular intersection. So, I mean, to be honest, I just can't support it.
Thank you. Councillor Templeton?
Thanks. Listen, I'm really happy to support this today. I think that when it comes to upgrades across our city, that we need to take a really measured approach. I think that constantly delaying things because there's another priority somewhere else would mean that we never get anything done, because there is always someone somewhere else that will be asking for attention. I think that when it comes to safety versus the convenience of an extra 30-second walk from a car park slightly further away, I think that safety trumps that every time. And I'm really happy to support the recommendations in here today. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always difficult when we have parking loss, especially outside businesses, but I'm sure that there's plenty of parking around the area. And it's a change, and change tends to settle in after some time, and people will get used to that 30-second walk to where they're going. Celeste?
Yeah, I'm really happy to support this. I think it's important to remember that the community board had this conversation, and the majority of the community board agreed that this is the solution that was going to work the best. It's always a struggle because there is no such thing as a perfect solution, and there's always a bit of a trade-off. We did have a conversation, and I think we need to continue that conversation to make sure that those concerns are addressed through the process. So I'm happy to support this today.
Excellent. On that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Do you want those recorded? So opposed, we've got Councillor Division. Okay.
Division. Yeah. Councillor Kewen? On Zoom?
No.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan?
Yes.
Councillor McDonald?
No.
Councillor Moore?
Yes.
Councillor Harrison Hunt?
Yes.
Councillor Coker? Councillor Peters? Councillor Templeton?
Aye.
Councillor Barber?
No.
Deputy Mayor Cotter?
Aye.
Councillor Fields?
Yep.
Councillor Johansson? Councillor Donovan?
Yes.
Councillor Goff?
No.
It's 9-4, 5 against.
So that's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 10, which is Wigram Hayton Roads intersection improvement. And we have David Sun, welcome, and Jacob. Welcome. Can you give us a very brief overview of the project? It's really for the benefit of people online looking on, so they know what we're talking about.
Good morning, Chair and Council. So here today we're going to brief you about this project, Wigram Hayton intersection improvement. So this project is to provide safe pedestrian and cyclist collection from Hayton Reserve to Wigram Hayton Road intersection, and also to provide a safe vehicle access from this intersection to the Napoleon Sport Hub. So we are going to propose a signalized four-way intersection to replace the current three-way priority control intersection with a raised platform. So the reason of having a raised platform is to encourage all vehicles from all directions to travel at a safer speed, and we are expecting more pedestrians and cyclists using this intersection once the work's been done. And this intersection is kind of in a rural, semi-urban area. So the massive land on the south side of Wigram Road are not developed, and there are no signalized intersections in the near surrounding area. So we're thinking a raised platform will encourage vehicles to travel at a lower speed. Yes, and the access to the Napoleon Y Sport Hub will be closed during 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. to the vehicles. However, the pedestrian and cyclist collection will not be affected. So the reason is the motorway covered, there's a height limit of 2.4 meters. So it's only allowed for light vehicles. Yeah, I think that's a general point of this project. If you have any questions, it's welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, open it up for questions. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. You mentioned it's a semi-rural area, which is generally an unusual place to put a raised platform in a semi-rural industrial area where there aren't pedestrians. So can you talk about why you're putting a raised platform in, and just comment on the cost of the raised platform itself?
Yes, the reason, as we mentioned previously, is to encourage vehicles traveling at a safer speed. It's a semi-urban area, so we're thinking maybe some vehicles may ride light in the future. So we have masked arm on Wigram Road, but we also would like to keep them travel at a safer speed. So the cost, the scheme design cost estimation for the platform is about $200,000, including the platform and the associated stormwater treatment. But this cost could be lower if we, in the detailed design stage, we try to tie the level of the platform to the fender, the curb channel, rather than to the top of the curb. Yep.
Sorry, can I just add something? Sorry. So our 85th percentile speed on this road is over 55 kilometres an hour at the moment. It has 14,000 vehicles per day, and vehicle speeds of over 90 kilometres an hour are not unknown. So there is a safety hazard. for
When
pedestrians
was that
crossing.
speed survey taken?
Early 22.
Early 22.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be a footpath on one side of the road?
No, unfortunately, the footpath on the south side of the road is not in the scope. So I did check with the traffic planners. They said normally the footpaths looked after by the subdivision developers in the future. So they will look after the footpath and the curb channel. So that's why it's not included in at the beginning in the scope.
So you're saying that the south side is likely to be divided and developed and have footpaths out the front in the future, is what you're saying?
In the future, but we cannot confirm the date for now. Yeah.
But we could be talking many, many years away.
We could. Yeah.
Could be. Yeah.
Okay.
Free.
Well, the raised platform's not free. I guess because currently the non-existent footpath is on the side of the road, and there's a footpath that stops in the middle of nowhere, and that's the footpath that would connect the shops to Ngā and everything else. And there's nowhere around that area for anywhere to cross the road. So in terms of safety and being able to create an area where less people have to cross the road because there's a footpath on both sides of the road, wouldn't a footpath be more of a safety priority than the investment in a raised platform? Because that provides a space for pedestrians to walk and provide less need to cross in the first place. So why has the investment in a raised platform been prioritised over a footpath?
So can I just, interrupt there? In the interests of time, the raised platform is under community board delegation.
That's correct.
So I think that you could probably take those questions offline if you wanted to. It's not part of our decision today.
Sure.
So did we get a mover and a seconder on this one? You, Councillor Peters and Councillor Templeton. And you had a question too, did you not? Thank you. Okay. So are there any other questions? All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on this? Councillor Coker, Councillor Moore.
I love hearing that we're not going to pay for a footpath going in and developers will pay for that. It's fantastic. It's a pity that's not being developed tomorrow, but I think that's good. This sounds very sensible to me, and I'll support the community board recommendation.
Councillor Moore.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have areas that are accessible for all forms of modes. Our area is missing many footpaths, not just this one, and we never seem to have the budget for it. So, but this is a crucial project. Ngā Pūnawai is very, very busy operation already, even before the Netzel Centre opens. Large events are causing chaos at the one entrance, even before that Netzel Centre opens. So the new entrance is vital to make a significant difference to improving the accessibility of what is a magnificent facility, no doubt about it. Certainly respect the decision of our community board and indeed with the raised platform, but I do have to comment on the priorities we're seeing as a council. We don't seem to have money for key crossing points around the area, particularly around schools close by to here. Currently we have a $0 budget for new footpaths, and there is no plan in sight to fill in those footpaths because there's no budget, there's no developer that will be putting them in. But we do have an extra $200,000 for a raised platform in an industrial area that's just been described as semi-rural, which won't be pedestrian heavy, but there's no budget for those pedestrian heavy areas where school kids are needing to cross the road. Likewise, a footpath on the other side of the road here would create less need to cross the road in the first place because it would connect the businesses to Ngā Pūnawai, also to Aidenfield. There'd be less need to cross. I just don't think it helps us build and trust a council when we don't have the money for these bare basics, but an extra $200,000 for a raised platform where there doesn't seem to be any evidence it needs to go. I just don't see that as helpful. It seems like a nice to have, but we have to fight for the bare basics. So our delegation today is purely just on the cycle lanes themselves, but I am saying what I feel is important and certainly what's been echoed to me by the community. Likewise, we've just been told that maybe these sites will be developed in future. Could be 5 years away, could be 10 years away. And yet that's less safety in that area for those many years. Actually, a footpath would do the job a lot better than what a raised platform would. Likewise, we're going to have about 3 years worth of roadworks on Halswell Road, possibly 4 over the next few years, which is going to send all the traffic onto Wigram Road. So it's going to be at a complete standstill for years. This is going to cause a whole lot more frustration. It's not necessarily going to make it a whole lot safer. I just can't understand where our priorities are sometimes. However, I'm certainly not against the delegation we do have today, so I will be abstaining. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Templeton.
Thanks so much. Completely agree with Councillor Moore about the need for more funding for pedestrian safety enhancements. We need more places for our communities to cross the road. We need more footpaths, especially in areas that are poorly serviced. Yes, Councillor Fields, there are many in Banks Peninsula too.
Reading my mind.
I was reading your mind.
Not difficult.
And but in this in this particular circumstance, I'm happy to approve the actual recommendations that are ahead of us clearly, but the raised safety platform here is for vehicles, not for pedestrians, and we know that in an area that's going to have a lot of additional traffic, 14,000 now, and a lot of extra people using it for Ngāpunawai, and a lot of people turning. That turning traffic at intersections is the key risk for accidents and injuries in vehicles. And so making sure that vehicles are slower when they are turning, when they are using this intersection, will help improve the crash and injury rate for people in vehicles rather than, and yes, it will help people crossing the road, but the key thing in this one is for the vehicles. And so I'm happy to support this. But additionally, I want footpaths. Rather than it being an either or, I think we need to be doing both, and I'd be really happy to support the move to get these things into the budget, and if needed, happy to second amendment at the draft to get a budget on for more pedestrian footpaths and crossing points.
Councillor Peters.
Thank you. Contrary to what's been said about this raised platform being a nice to have, we've heard from staff today that there is a speed problem down this stretch of Wigram Road. I regularly drive this piece of road and am tailgated a number of times because impatient motorists don't like that you do 50 k's. Putting in the raised platform is going to bring the safety needed for the vulnerable road users that are in this location. We've heard at the community board about this. We've decided at the community board democratically, and I would hope that my fellow councillors would respect that decision that the community board has made. And with the introduction of the special vehicle lanes here for the Little River cycle link is what we're deciding today. And if we can keep focused to that, that would be good. But this raised platform, yes, it's causing some consternation in Andre's constituents, but please understand that we're trying to create a safe environment here through these works to actually give the vulnerable road users and all users of this, being vehicles, cyclists, pedestrians, and we have heard through the consultation that people do walk through this location, so there is not a total lack of pedestrians, as Councillor Moore suggested. There are people that walk from Wigram Skies or from the industrial area down into Ngāpunawai to recreate. So creating a safe environment for the vulnerable road users by causing a wee bit of disruption to the vehicle movement of cars and other vehicles, I think is well justified. And we did thrash this out at the community board well, and I do thank the staff for the extra information they've provided today through the fact that there is history of speed problems here, and I'm very happy with the decision we've made. And I'm also want to pick up on the point about footpaths. There's a number of locations around the city where we don't do this well, where we've got roads that people are living on that they can't walk to the nearest suburb or between facilities within their suburb, and we need to do that better. So I'd be more than happy for us to have a conversation around the long-term plan to try and fill in those blanks and fill in the gaps in the network so that people can use the active transport measures to get from where they need to get to. So more than happy to support this today and urge my my fellow councillors, please support our community board and the decision we've made here and get these special vehicle lanes, cycleways in place with this development, despite the concerns people might have about the raised platform. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Johansson. I'm trying to
thank you.
vacate the chair. Oh, he's there.
Yeah, I totally endorse the need to improve access into Ngāpunawai. I think that's really, really important. But I keep thinking, like, why aren't we putting roundabouts in? This seems like the most obvious place for a roundabout, and yet we're not doing it. We're just putting traffic lights everywhere, you know, I sometimes wonder that we're just over designing, over engineering at a huge expense some of these intersections that we're doing. So, you know, I share the concern around the footpaths as well. We should be making district plan changes or infrastructure design standard changes to ensure that we can get footpaths in. I mean, the irony is, if you go down like Martians Road, you'll see a whole set of traffic lights for a development that hasn't even been done yet. And here we have a place that has the most logical, sensible place to put a footpath where we don't have one. And so we need to think about our planning, because it just seems a real gap that we can enable people to do developments but not put in the infrastructure when it's the most logical and sensible time to do so. And, you know, if there's ways we can improve that, then let's please get onto it. But look, I'll support this today. I do understand the need for this to become a safer place. If you go to Ngāpunawai, it has been a tremendous success in terms of the traffic and the people that it's generating using it. And at the moment, we do have insufficient capacity to take that growth that's going to happen with the new centre that's going in there, the new car park that we're building. So I think it makes sense to improve and enhance this intersection.
Councillor Kewen.
Yeah, thank you, Pauline. And yeah, whilst I agree with most of the points raised by my fellow councillors, just one correction, Yanni, we are putting in traffic lights everywhere except where they're really wanted. And so let's just not lose sight of that point. The one thing I want to raise around this is around the raised platform, slowing traffic down to 25 k an hour at all intersections does not seem the smartest way forward. If we have a speeding problem, we should be going to the new government and saying that we need speed cameras in particular areas and go for a zero tolerance. I would support that. So if someone goes through an intersection at 1 k over what they're meant to do, they get a fine. And if they're clearly advertised, you will see a big change of behaviour. But going after the entire network, and as much as I support community boards having their delegation, that's fine, but this is part of the greater network, and slowing it down when we haven't had a proper conversation with all our public that that's the way they want to do it, I don't think is a smart way to spend that money, so I won't be supporting. Thank you.
Thank you. And on that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
One opposed. And Andre, Councillor Moore's. So that's 2 abstain. Councillor Moore and the Mayor. Thank you, that's carried. So I'll now vacate the chair, hand over it.
I'll take you to walk a bit slower and miss this one.
Okay, one, yeah. Maybe after. Okay, item 11. Okay, this should be so easy. Yeah, Melanie's, Councillor Coates moving it, Councillor Cotter's seconding it. Have we got any discussion? Have we got any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye, against? And you're not having any right to reply. Thank you. Carried. Right, so now we'll have break. So 10 minutes? Oh, yes.
15 would be good.
You're not going to get me to read this again, are you? Right, what we had a bit earlier on, Eco Action Trust is an organisation that works with 25 schools to raise and plant native seedlings in different parts of the city. They do a fantastic job, and last week Deputy Mayor Cotter attended the Trust Awards, which acknowledge leadership and the hard work that the schools put in. They also took the time to acknowledge Andrew Rutledge and the Parks team for their support
in finding appropriate sites with logistics and with mulch so the seedlings have the best chance to thrive. So it's great to see the community, schools and the council collaborating for a fantastic outcome to the city. So well done, Andrew and team. These guys and the Eco Action Trust people, they are a piece of work for me. But very engaged and extremely organised.
No, sorry.
So do we want 10, 15 minutes?
It's going to have to 11 o'clock because we've got to work on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll come back at 11:00. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Howdy, Jane. Pat, oh, here's Pat. That's good. So now we're going to move on to item 12, Christchurch Wastewater Treatment Plant Independent Review. So we have a handful of presenters. We've got Mary, Katie, John, and Pat online. So and Pat Doherty will go first. Welcome, Pat. How are you?
Good, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Excellent.
So first of all, I'd like to apologise for not being there in person, but I really did try. My flight last night got cancelled when I was at the airport. And this morning I flew to Christchurch, circled your lovely city for 40 minutes, and then flew back to Nelson because of the fog. So I'm attending by Zoom. So my background, I was the CE of Nelson City Council for 5 years, ending at the end of 2023. And before that, I was CE of Govt Coast District Council for 10 years. But in the early part of my career, I was an infrastructure engineer and very much focused on Three Waters. So while this wasn't a technical review, my background was very useful. I also just want to say that this was a team effort by Tregascus Brown, and we have our Chief Executive, Rebecca Elvey, attending the meeting by Zoom as well. Rebecca has had a lot of experience with this type of review, and I can honestly say without her input, the report that you have in front of you would be nowhere near as concise, as coherent as it is. So just want to acknowledge Rebecca for that. So this was a complex topic, and got more so the further we got into it. We met with 54 people in 33 interviews, and we identified 22 issues, and some of them had considerable overlap. We analysed those under three headings: symptoms, underlying causes, and contributing factors. But we also identified a lot of positives that needed to be recognised, so we added a fourth heading of positives. So look, I don't intend to tell you what you've already read in the report, but there's 6 or 7 things I just want to highlight and draw to your attention today. The first of those was the scale and impact of the stench. While I didn't smell the odour in Christchurch, I have encountered it in my career as a wastewater engineer, a proud manager of 50 hectares of ponds that turn anaerobic, and there is nothing quite so bad. It's absolutely appalling. It does stick to the clothes, it does stick to washing. And for those residents in the eastern suburbs having to put up with this day after day, they were experiencing physical symptoms, and they were experiencing stress symptoms. And to put it in context, if you look at Appendix 5, we showed the number of complaints received. And there's the data from the Smelted app, the ECAN Smelted app. And so that app scores us people to rate the smell on a scale of 1 to 6, where 4 is you can smell it inside the house with the windows shut, and 5, I can't use my house for some activities because of the smell. And over the 10,600 complaints that were registered on that app in the time that the council had access to it, the average score was 4.5. So somewhere between it's getting into the house with the window shut and I can't use parts of my house. The impact on those people was terrible. In our interviews, we also encountered people still demonstrating symptoms of stress. And that's one of the reasons that we included a suggestion for improvement relating to the provision of counselling services. We came up with 2 key recommendations, 2 issues that need to be addressed above all others. The first of those are related to developing effective and respectful relationships with the affected communities. And there were three background issues to that. Now, when we were meeting with people, I had a list of topics I wanted to cover, but the process was we would ask each person to tell us their story from the day the fire started to the day the smell stopped. And there were 3 issues that the community representatives continually raised without prompting from me. The first of all those was investment in earthquake repairs. And there was a remarkable consistency from the community reps that the council had underinvested in earthquake repairs in the eastern suburbs. They felt they had been shortchanged and looked at the rest of the city and felt that the rest of the city was being treated better. Interestingly enough, virtually all the staff and elected members we talked to had a differing view, and talked about the amount of money that had gone into underground infrastructure and just how much money had been spent in that area. We didn't start diving deep to try and reconcile those differences, but we just point out there is a difference there, and that's one of the reasons that led to the suggestion for improvement about targeting the eastern suburbs through the LTP consultation process. The next one that was raised frequently was the organics processing plant, the OPP. People talked about the 10-year struggle before the council agreed on principle in April 22 to relocate the plant. But for some, it was the last straw when, as light appeared at the end of the OPP tunnel, a far worse odour issue started appearing from the wastewater treatment plant. And residents are still worried that the OPP may not be relocated and that smell may return, which led to the suggestion for improvement around the keeping the affected community informed of progress. And I noted the chair of the community board picked up on the same topic earlier in the morning. The third point was a deep feeling that if these odour issues had been affecting other areas of Christchurch, they would have been addressed far more quickly. These communities were not being heard, and the feeling was that the relationship had been better, it might not have taken the council so long for the council to understand how badly these communities were suffering. So that's why we have put in recommendation 1, prioritise strengthening and sustaining effective and respectful relationships with the affected communities so as to regain their trust and confidence. Recommendation 2 is about the response recovery structure that was used. And in our view, this was probably the most, setting up a program management steering committee was probably the most significant mistake made. It sent the message to the organisation that this was a business as usual response, and it wasn't. If there had been an incident management team based on a SIMS structure, a coordinated incident management system structure, many of the issues that we talk about in the report would have been addressed far more quickly. Priorities would have been better established, resourcing issues would have been brought to high-level attention more quickly, roles and responsibilities would have been better defined, and there would have been more attention paid to risk management. So that directly leads to recommendation 2, which endorses the use of an IMT based on the SIMS model as a standard response structure for significant large-scale events. And from the discussions we had with council staff, it's a structure that had been used before and had been used afterwards. It just wasn't used for this event. And I feel that if it had been, then I probably wouldn't be talking to you today. There are two other issues that merit highlighting. One is about the communications and engagement. The council didn't want to say this is an unknown space and we are working through it. Instead, in the first few months, the council downplayed the significance of the damage to the trickling filters and the potential consequences. There was an opportunity to tell the story before it happened, to share the problems and the risks of terrible odours with the community and help their understanding of what lay in front of them, but it was lost. And when we talked to the community reps about this, would your response have been different if you had been warned in, say, January, February, that there is a potential of serious odours and we will make sure we have the right information for you? The response was yes, but we had to work so hard to convince the council there was a problem. But if they had been engaged right from the start with the facts, and there was a risk of these odours, there would have been more of a we are in it together process. The community could have been warned, partner agencies prepared, and advice readily available. And that's one of the reasons that led to the suggestion for improvement around developing a communications and engagement strategy now. Better to have that document ready in the cold light of day rather than trying to develop something when you're in the heat of battle. The last one I wanted to talk about in terms of issues, problem issues, was so that even now the plant is far from being in a robust condition. And I quote from a presentation to the council in May 2023. What you have is a highly lean temporary system with no redundancy operating at its limit. The silence on what the replacement plans are has residents worried. And this just cannot happen again to the eastern suburbs. So that led to the suggestion for improvement on keeping the community informed on progress with replacement plans. So there are some other things that I want to acknowledge, we want to acknowledge. The first of those is that the challenges the council faced at the time of this issue needed to be recognised. This was an organisation already under pressure. A new third-tier structure had, I think, been announced the day of the fire. Banks Peninsula water treatment plant and wastewater treatment plants were coming in back in-house at the start of 23. Staff turnover had doubled, like most of local government at that time. COVID-19 controls were still actively being enforced, and I've just looked at those again, and you couldn't imagine a worse time to be trying to engage with a community. Global supply chains were disrupted by COVID and then disrupted even more by the Ukraine war. And although Christchurch is a big organisation, I'd imagine there was a considerable amount of resources going into the debates over the Te Kaha multi-use arena and new density rules that the government was seeking to impose. So this was not a good time for an organisation to be agile and responsive. One of the things as a CE, you know, is that one of the things I liked about working for local government is that everybody gets up every day and comes to work, and their main motivation is to make life better for their community. And that's nothing different here. One of the things that we had to do was, the purpose of our review was to understand what happened from systems and processes point of view, what went well, what could have been done better, and provide practical recommendations for improvement. Part of that was to understand how the community felt and to provide a community voice. So a lot of our commentary is based on how things seem from outside the organisation. But some things went really well. The technical response, losing 60% of the BOD treatment capacity of the plant was unprecedented. But your Three Waters team picked up that challenge. They kept that plant running somehow. They never stopped the flow to the plant. It ran most of the time complying with discharge consent requirements, and managed to get it fixed by the end of July, and that needs to be acknowledged. The second 5 months, once the council realised there was a problem and started treating it as an all-of-organisation issue, when the citizens and community group got involved in the community partnerships team, there was a lot of positive comment from the community about what was happening then. Another one, the site visits and face-to-face communication over the paint discoloration also got a lot of praise and compliments. But unfortunately, the community had not been well informed over the first 6 months. So by the time they were better informed about what the council was doing and what it was trying to do, they were so unhappy it didn't matter anymore. That opportunity was really lost in the first 6 months. But as I said, council staff get up each day trying to do their best for the community. My observation of your staff is that they're very loyal, very committed. And some of them worked huge hours to respond to that crisis as it unfolded, to try and make life better for the community, and also to keep their business as usual jobs going as well. And that needs to be acknowledged. I've seen the media coverage and it hasn't been yet, but it should be. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to answer questions.
Okay, so we do that.
Would you, Mayor, like to just do the improvement plan next, or would you like to take questions at this point on the report?
I think we'll do questions. Questions. Anybody got any questions of Pat?
Of Pat.
Yeah. Councillor Donovan?
Hi, Pat. Thank you. There was a bit of feedback that there were a few. Thank you for the work on the report. It was really helpful to read through that. There are a few items in the report that there was some feedback that those sort of some aspects might have been missed or might not have quite correctly portrayed some of the detail. Do we have an opportunity to add that in?
No, our report is complete. And look, if we had written down and recorded every issue that was raised, this report would be 2 to 3 times the size it is. And if an issue wasn't being raised consistently, then it didn't get in the report. So I'm aware there are things that were raised by 1 or 2 people that are not in this report. But we were trying to provide a balanced report on what a consensus was. So no, we won't be changing our report. I suspect that's, if there are other issues, then you may wish to introduce those as part of the debate around the response plan.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Councillor Johansson?
Thank you, and thank you for your report. I guess the lingering question I have from reading it is, although you've identified some of the key failings, like the lack of urgency, what's not clear from the report is why that wasn't, why social well-being and why the lack of urgency in the response. And I just wondered if there's any sort of further light you can give us as to understanding why those things weren't acted on quicker when the requests were coming in. Thank you.
So what we were more focusing on systems and processes, and I think we have identified some of the reasons. I think that there was not a good understanding initially about just how bad that smell could be. I mean, if you haven't, I suspect that some people thought that this might be, if there were problems with odour, it'll be like the OPP plant. And of course, it's nothing like the OPP plant. It's just a world worse. So I think that there was probably, and I've touched on that, but I think a lack of realisation just how bad it could be in the risk assessment at the start. And if people had realised just what it was like, then I think the risk assessment would have been different, and it would have been highlighted, and the response would have been better. I also talked about a lack of monitoring of the data coming in. And particularly the online information. A lot of civil defence organisations now, rather than sending someone out to site to see what's happening, they just scroll through social media to find photos of what's happening out there. And you had a really rich source of data in the comments that were going on different Facebook pages throughout the city, plus your own information coming in that could have seen a response quicker than it did. So I have actually touched on it, but there were probably those types of opportunities where things could have been done differently. And that's one of the reasons I talked about the incident management team, where you have an intelligence team who their job is to find out what's happening. And that's the first thing they would have been doing, is looking for those rich data sources. So the opportunity was there, but I think that not setting up the IMT was the failing, was a critical source of the problem there.
Final question from me is given that one of the themes of the report too is around that idea of financial prudence, I guess at the expense of people's, health and well-being. In terms of redress or fixing the problems, how big a consideration do you think we should give to additional investment into the communities that were the most impacted from this?
I think as a consultant, I probably went as far as I could when I said that you need to be engaging with those communities through the LTP process and find out what their concerns are and what the fix might be. So no, I'm not going to try and put a number against that. I know that just like every other council in the country, Christchurch City Council is facing its financial challenges.
Okay, thank you. Right, thank you, Councillor Johansson. Thank you, Pat, for an extremely good report. In my view, you hit the nail right on the head, especially about the concerns of the local, of the affected community. So I'll now ask Mary Richardson to come up and talk to the response.
So before Mary and Katie open up on the improvement plan and the response, I think it's important that I say a few things. As the Chief Executive and on behalf of the organisation, I formally apologise for the matters we did not get right and assure you that we are fully committed to engaging with both the community and the community boards to deliver the improvements that we will be working through with the community, particularly for the East, and also to stress the points that Pat made, to commend the operational staff who delivered no interruption of service all the way through that period, and to thank Pat for a very comprehensive and useful report. So I'd like to pass over to Mary Richardson now to take us through the key issues on the improvement plan.
Kia ora, thank you very much. Look, I won't go into a lot of details about this. The council has been briefed around this and also heard a comprehensive report from Pat. What we have done is Pat's report and the review identified the need for a coordinated response and plan. We have attached and developed an initial plan, and that initial response, along with the recommendations that are up there today, really sort of reiterate the need to recognise the impact this had and apologise that response did not consider early enough the well-being of the community. It's actually and makes a commitment to co-develop a plan with the community board, affected communities and key partners. So to make sure that that is a collective and co-developed plan rather than a council sort of response alone. And also, as Pat has done, CE has done, and the recommendations do want to also acknowledge the work by the team at the wastewater plant, as the recommendations identify the responses still ongoing and actually still potentially have an impact on the community as we try and manage the stench and that plant on a very limited capacity. So that acknowledge the work that the team are doing out at the plant, and also as the report and the recommendations do also acknowledge the work by comms and community support, and also their commitment to continue with that work. And then lastly, just to acknowledge the partners and the community that have worked with us and have dealt with the situation and have made a commitment to continue to work with us on that co-design and getting our relationship back on track with that community. So I won't go into details. I think the report says it all, as does the recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Now, I am more than happy to move this before we get into questions. Is there a Councillor Cotter will second it. So are there any questions of Mary? Councillor Johansson and Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the work that's been done. I guess just picking up on the concern around financial prudence as being one of the key reasons why things possibly weren't done. What sort of assurance or undertaking can we get today as a council that the actions that we pass today will be implemented in a timely fashion and will have resources made available to progress?
So there's a recommendation up there that identifies that we will initiate the co-design work and have some of that. It may not be completed because we have to go with the time that's suitable for the community and the partners, but we will have work done or some work done in time to inform the LTP.
Recommendation 5.
Yep. Okay, so any more questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor. Oh,
clear on that. I appreciate if we pass recommendation 5. What I guess all I'm trying to understand is that for that work to happen, it will require some resource. So is there a resource that will be made available to work with the community board, and the key stakeholders to develop that plan? And that's really what I want an assurance around.
So my response is that all the staff at council have a lot of work to do and have a lot of pressure on resources and time, and are all stretched, but the key staff have made a commitment to ensure that we dedicate time to this and will identify some resources to support it. But we may, depending on what the co-design identifies, we may have to come back to council to if there's additional resources, because we only have the budgets and the time we have.
Okay, Councillor McDonald.
Hey, thank you for that, Mary. This one's probably slightly out of scope, but I want to ask it anyway because I think it's important. Probably putting your infrastructure hat on, or one of your many hats. In terms of the, I guess the challenge we've got is that we're working through a confidential process, which you would expect around the insurance claim. We know that in the coming weeks, I think the team are working through a public timeline that we can manage, so that we can work through that. Is there anything else the team need at the moment to keep the treatment plant going? Are we confident in terms of the resourcing, in terms of what we're doing, knowing that there will be the occasional issue that does crop up potentially, but is there anything in your mind we could be doing as a council to support the team to ensure that that's, because it's got such a big impact right across the city? Could you just give a view on that? Sorry, it's a wee bit out of scope.
Right.
But I think
So the team out there are challenged daily by running the plant with that capacity, with that limited capacity, and they are juggling the aerators working and not working, and the different challenges they face. Perhaps I could come back with a comprehensive report, because there's a lot of technical details and technical issues and breakages and fixing and new things being brought in. So Adam Toos and his team are doing a significant job out there, but it is incredibly challenging. And so the sooner that we can actually start on the permanent solution, the better. Because it is on a rubber band, to use a cliche. So, but I'll talk to Adam and see if there's anything extra that we could put in there that would just give us a little more surety.
Well, thank you for that. I guess the point of asking that probably in public is, I'm sure all my colleagues agree that, we want this, we're as supportive as we can be in terms of keeping this open. So a report might be useful, not taking up too much time, but just to understand if there's things we can be doing that we aren't doing currently. Great, thank you.
A great answer, Mary, and you did right. Adam and the co are working right on a knife edge from hero or zero, and it's not going to take much to tip it one way or the other, so we need to be aware of that. Councillor Harrison Hunt, please.
Kia ora, Mary, just one question. Who are the key staff that you talked about in regards to addressing resolution 5 here?
Right. So we are putting together a team to respond to that, which includes the community board team, the community team, the comms team, and also some of the people involved in the initial response. So we're developing that team. It's meeting next week to develop and identify, and then we will be talking to the community board chair as well, and about how we work with co-design. We have already spoken to some of the key partners who have flagged their commitment to be involved. So so there's
cool.
There's that.
Follow up. How many of the ELT will be a part of that group?
I'll be part of that group.
And Dawn, will you be?
I will be talking with Mary very regularly.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. Councillor Donovan?
Kia ora, Mary, thank you. Just in response to point 5 of the resolutions, I'm aware that the community boards and the Waikato Coastal Linwood Community Board in particular is sort of quite stretched. I know that's true across the organisation, but our community board in particular, I think, is particularly stretched because of the range of different issues that we're dealing with. In terms of developing and working with community, will we consider bringing in some external resource to complement the existing resource?
So we tend to talk to the community board and that team. It may be an advantage to have a independent person coming when you're doing co-design, and particularly with a community where the relationship in some areas is not as strong as it could be. They may be more confident and are happy to have an independent person, and we have looked at potential resourcing for that.
Great. And the second very quick follow-up to that is in terms of the key stakeholders, one bit of feedback was making sure that we include some of those grassroots organisations that were heavily involved in working with council to develop that response at the time. So they helped organise some of the meetings and things, so making sure that they're part of that, not just the formalised community stakeholders that we might typically engage with.
Right.
So just making sure that we understand.
Yep. So there's a mix, and we've tried to recognise that in the report where we've talked about agencies and community groups.
Yeah,
so there's
perfect.
two different things. The agencies are the structured agencies, and they're often largely government agencies or professional agencies, and then there's community groups. So we've tried to reflect that. So that's our intent.
Okie dokie, right. So we'll go into debate, thank you. And I will say that we've had some amendments from Councillor Johansson and Councillor Donovan, which Mary has worked very hard with. They are happy with those, and which we've acknowledged the concerns, especially with the roles of council going forward. So thank you for your time with that, Mary. Have we got any debate, please? Councillor Peters?
Thank you. I'd like to reiterate the importance of us as an organisation, both formally apologising today for this and to look to learn from this as an organisation so that we can really ensure this never happens again to any of our communities. So thank you to the staff who have worked so hard to keep that plant running for a start. The whole city depends upon that, and thank you. Thank you to the staff that have worked through the response, and I think it's a point of maturity today for us as a council to be taking this report on board and learning from it, and we really need to ensure that we learn all the lessons that we need to learn from this, and get this incident management team and the likes in place so that we don't have to have communities going through this again. So happy to support this today, and really keen for us as a council to begin this healing process with these suburbs and the residents out in the east. And we rest assured as a council we're committed to working with you and getting back onto a better footing and helping you in your lives out there to exist and thrive. So apologies, and let's move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Harrison-Hunt, please.
Tēnā rā tātou katoa. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the report. It's highly confronting, and it shows a lot of things that we can work on, which I am very appreciative of. And for me, I wasn't obviously in term when this obviously went down. But one thing I can say is I want to talk about my mum for a second. The reason being is it's about relationships. And my mum actually she grew up in Bournemouth Crescent, right near Hampshire Street there on the east. And she was there for quite a lot of her life. And she lived next to the Frosts, who are still there. And the things that she learnt from that street was something called whanaungatanga, which is around connections. And the things that she taught me were actually very simple. The first one is whanaungatanga, which is connection, is non-reciprocal. It's non-transactional. You don't expect things back when you give something like kindness or you give something of value. The other thing is partnership. Now, partnership is transactional. Partnership means you give me something and I'll give you something. That is therefore a partnership. So when we're looking at this, the thing that I feel like we're missing, particularly in a big beast such as the council, is we sometimes miss that whanaungatanga part with our communities. It tends to be in regards to some sort of reciprocation. You give us your time, community, and we'll give you this. And when we're looking at that, there's also another layer of that, which is silos, and that was defined quite heavily in the report here around our inability to be able to work with other organisations, and I completely understand that. But here are some things we do know. We do technical things really, really well. Our staff are amazing in terms of the technical aspects of our work and the things that we do. They are experts in their field and they are phenomenal. And when we strategise communications, we open ourselves up to perceptions, particularly in a beast like this, around a master-servant relationship. And that there is the issue in itself. So I have 4 things I wanted to talk about, and one of them was be present. Number 2 is be open. Number 3 was keep the community informed in everything we do. And the 4th one is a different one, which is don't rely on strategy or policy to be the be-all or end-all. Work outside that. And for staff, their best asset is themselves. And for us as leaders, our best assets is ourselves too. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been elected. So the things that I'm saying here is have a bit of whanaungatanga, work outside of that policy and all of those things that mandate us to do all of these things, and continue to just be yourselves and be kind. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Barber.
Yeah, thanks for that. Look, I think first, I also want to acknowledge the excellent report from Pat. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, really comprehensive. I went through that process as chair of the community board at the time in that area. I think there's so much to learn here. I mean, obviously a mistake was made, a fire ensued. Emergency services did a fantastic job on the day to get it under control. And I think, you know, the staff and the contractors to get the plant back up and running in such a difficult situation, I think they did an amazing job. And it's great to see that positive side of things is acknowledged. I really understand the feelings of the people in the East, you know, feeling neglected and you know, I'll never forget where I was when I first smelt the smell, the putrid smell coming out of the plant. I was actually in town at the time and I was gobsmacked at how bad it was and just couldn't imagine actually living with it day after day, being in close proximity to it, you know. And from what I understand, there's little that could be done to stop that smell other than repair the plant and work out a system where we could get the plant running. And it continues to happen day after day. They face issues out there and they're dealing with them incredibly well. But I guess this report is more about what we could have done better. And I think if there's one thing it teaches us as a council is that our communication should have been clear, concise and consistent from day one. You know, people understand if we can't fix the smell, but they want to know how long, what's happening, what can be done to help them in their situation. And we needed to do that every day. So there's so much that we've learnt from this, and I hope that we don't have to go through this sort of thing again. But fantastic report, and really pleased to see it. Thanks.
Okay, so Councillor McDonald.
Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, thank you. I think it is a really thank you, Pat, for doing the work on this. I too was part of the interview process for this, and I think it's actually been useful in a sense to highlight some of the challenges that we had from it. It's sort of difficult in a way because I think the council often gets blamed, and you know, quite rightly, sometimes quite rightly so, but other times, you know, not necessarily for good reason. The reality is we didn't start the fire. You know, the challenge was with, as publicly sort of noted, you know, contractors and subcontractors, and immediately the team swung into action to fix it and keep it going. And I sort of think about it and go, well, actually, you know, what was the telling point for me? And the smell was one of them, but actually the second one was fronting the public meeting, which in my view was far too late, which we did out in the community. And I mean, I have a lot of public meetings, and Phil comes along in my area, and I've never experienced that level of anger from a community over that lack of communication. And I think it just goes to show that actually, a bit like what Tyler said, fronting up is the only way you can deal with situations like this. Being present in the community is one of them. and actually taking sort of the stuff they throw at us as well. We learnt a lot from that, and I think looking back from my point of view, the thing I would have done early, and I'm happy to apologise as well, was probably have far stricter governance oversight of the whole process. I think if you look at what changed when we began having those weekly or bi-weekly updates to council, that was useful for the public to see, but it also shifted the focus of the organisation internally because it put a lot more pressure on. So there were two streams of work happening, the team getting it up and running, and they did an amazing job. And I think the communication side, which also did, in my view, a good job. I think there's always going to be improvements, but it's sort of unfortunate in a way because these reports are good in a sense because they highlight the challenges it had, but at the same time we're kicking people, that actually work really, really hard within our organisation. So I just think it's worth having a bit of caution around that. There are things we could have got better. I think this is an unprecedented event in New Zealand. We did not start the fire, and the team responded as best they could at the time. But for me, like I say, that level of anger just shows the ongoing issues that have been in that community for some time. And I think something we do need to focus in on as we look at the LTP. But I think it's important to acknowledge that there are improvements, but the teams that worked really, really hard, both operationally and communications, did a good job in my view as well. There's always stuff that's going to be wrong. It's the nature of emergencies and responses. But if we can make some improvements from this moving forward, we'll be better as a city. But just caution, I'd hate for it to be a public perception that we're running down the teams that actually worked their guts out for weeks and weeks and weeks. When actually, if you think about things like the smell, we didn't have an answer at the time. Fundamentally, we did not know what would stop that straight away, but we worked on stuff and we were agile as we could be to get a solution. And as soon as we did, we moved forward. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as well.
Well, thank you. Councillor Cotto?
Yeah, thank you. And following on from Councillor McDonald's comments, and I think the report does outline that we did get it right in the end, but it took too long, and that's the big learning from this. But I'd like to thank the Chief Executive for your words of apology and your commitment on behalf of the organisation going forward to honour these resolutions as well. And whanaungatanga, Councillor Harrison-Hunt, I think this organisation has to really realise the value of community boards in these sorts of things. Community boards know their communities, and their communities know the community boards, and they reach right out like a mycelium into the forest. So we need to take full advantage of our community boards in these situations, and then also our elected members. And you talked about silos, but we also still have silos within this organisation, and I think that was called out in the report as well, that if we could work more as cross teams together, we'd be better off. But look, I also want to reiterate that the report here, and thank you for the report, Pat, highly commends our Three Waters team for continuing to do an outstanding job. And it can't be reiterated enough that the job that they're doing out there at the plant, just keeping it going, doesn't be thinking about if it crapped out. And it also calls out it highly commends the community teams, the community groups, and the interagency response group for also providing good support for the affected communities. So going forward, this council needs to get these support systems activated immediately in the event of another disastrous circumstance, should there be one. And the key to this is the incident management team. It's the key to getting things right in the future. So this is about, I think we draw a line here, it's about going forward and getting things right, taking the learnings and implementing it within the organisation. So it's a great set of recommendations there, which I'll be fully supportive of.
Thank you. Right, my last bit. The Bromley area community, Yanni. Oh no, I'll go last. Right, Councillor Johansson.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge the work on the report and start with a Māori proverb. He aha te mai nui o te ao. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? It is people. As a council, collectively, we have failed the people in the East. While individually, some of us worked our hardest to impress upon our colleagues and council staff the issues that were happening in real time and early on, at informals, via email, through various council processes, it was not enough to convince the majority to take action in a proactive manner. I personally made repeated calls of action to address the psychosocial impact and for a coordinated approach of the CWTP fire from almost as soon as it happened. This report makes it clear we were too slow to respond. It highlights that there was no sense of urgency, that there were poor relationships, that were risks that were not properly recognised or reported, and that people felt council prioritised financial prudence at the expense of the health and well-being. People suffered from nausea, vomiting, coughing, headaches, sleeplessness, watering eyes, lack of physical activity, physical isolation, and worry. The irony is that we have signed a pledge as a city to have greater resilience. We joined global disaster recovery networks and hosted symposiums to learn lessons post-quake. The extraordinary thing is that you could understand this happening in another city, perhaps one who had not experienced the decade of disaster that we had, but yet despite all of our discussions and our learnings, we failed to do the basics when it mattered most. Well, today is our chance to take collective responsibility for what happened and begin the journey towards helping heal the harm that was caused. This will require not just words, but a commitment to resources and investment in the local communities who bore the brunt of the impact. Clearly from the report and as local councillor, it is abundantly obvious that there's a significant level of environmental inequity in the east of the city. The review highlights this as an area of concern. The organics plants, the shipping containers, the metal scrap yards, car dismantlers, toxic chemicals in the river, the munted roads and footpaths. People's quality of life is being adversely impacted by the lack of action in dealing with these things in a timely manner. The irony is that the pace of which problems around a rugby stadium for professional sports can be addressed is far quicker and nimbler than the pace of things that are on the east that get dealt with, which are ruining people's lives on a daily basis. In conclusion, I want to acknowledge the community. While we have failed collectively as a council, the community collectively stood up to hold us to account. Many individuals, despite the horrible circumstances they faced, rose up to support action. I thank them for that. The solution going forward is to involve them in what we do. And in conclusion, I end with a former mayor's quote when we signed our resilience pledge. "Community engagement lies at the heart of the matter," she said, and then quoted Professor Gluckman, the Prime Minister's chief scientist. It follows that from the psychosocial perspective, those involved in directing the recovery should create governance structures that understand and actively include community participation and enhance individual and community resilience. Such approaches will be most likely to be effective in re-establishing coping and functioning communities. Thank you.
Councillor Donovan.
Well said, Mr. Johansson.
Kia ora koutou. I'd like to just start by acknowledging, as we've done so in the apology, the impact on residents from the fire and the offensive stench. And I think it's important to note that this happened in a wider context. This has been a part of a wider environment with a double whammy with the impacts of odours from the organics processing plant. So I think it's appropriate that Council's now formally apologised, because this is a recognition that this is a starting point for where we can do better. I'd also like to acknowledge the community and their efforts to work with Council and raise these concerns, and also one of the local councillors, Yanni Johansson, for his advocacy on this issue. I think it's vital that we centre the community voice and make sure that we listen closely to those that are most closely connected to their communities, and I think that was a key finding from this report. I'd also like to acknowledge the authors of the report for providing feedback. I think that's been really helpful, and also staff. I think it's important to know that, we're asking staff to respond to a situation that wasn't business as usual, and we're asking them to take on extra work and respond to a situation that was unprecedented. So, I'd like to acknowledge that, in particular, Gary and Katie worked very closely with many members of the community, and appreciate that that's been a huge amount of work on their behalf. In terms of moving on to the report, I think the report itself is recommendations are clear and unambiguous. We should have done better. This isn't the first time we've had to deal with a crisis, and when disaster struck, our response was poor and slow. Our initial response was to describe it as an unpleasant odour, despite feedback from community that this was far worse than this. Our technical response, as everyone has noted, was excellent. However, in terms of our wellbeing response, we're far too slow to react. Urgency was lacking, and that was a key shortcoming, and it's a learning moving forward. I also want to reiterate that we did get this feedback from our community, so one of the key learnings from this is actually taking that on board. So moving forward, the report highlights the need to rebuild relationships, which, as the report notes, were poor at best. A key part of this is actually recognising that there were real-world impacts on people. Many people had to pay higher costs for power and other things. So moving forward, I'd like to see a clear action plan, which I'm glad to see is recommended in the resolutions. And to bring about changes, we need to move beyond business as usual to something concrete and to implement those changes as part of our long-term plan. I just want to thank everybody once again. I think this is an opportunity for us to learn the lessons, to acknowledge the harm caused within communities and to move forward.
Thank you very much. Right, me. The Bromley area have had it bad for years through one thing or another, especially the OPP for 13 years. Now, when the wastewater treatment plant went up in smoke, it was an accident, and a lot of people said, oh, well, that's an accident, we can't help it. OPP wasn't an accident, in my view. And we had with the wastewater treatment plant, we had a bad response, as reiterated in the report, and I apologise along with the council and the CE for that. But the wastewater treatment plant was the straw that broke the camel's back, and people out there have had enough, and this did not help at all. So I'd like once again apologise for that. But one of the good things that came out of it is, as someone said before, community groups and advocacy groups like Sewer Crisis, for argument's sake, they came to the fore and rallied around and got people sort of pointing in the right direction, even though it was a bad direction and the smell was bad. But as I say, once again, I apologise. I will now put the vote because I don't think there's anyone else that wants to speak. So with that, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against?
Aye.
Thank you. Carried. Good. So now we move on to item 13. Yep. So who's going to talk to that? Are we all happy with it? Maybe.
We've got some questions. That
Okay,
came from a
so
deputation.
Councillor McClelland is happy to move it, and Councillor Coker, as she throws me her name tag, is happy to second it.
So, staff, there were a series of questions raised from the deputation this morning. Yeah.
Righto. Welcome to the top table.
Morning, everyone.
Morning. Afternoon. Morning.
So, the Linwood bus stop improvements is part of the Transport Choices program, and today we're seeking approval for the first stage of the project that includes 14 locations. This project has been broken into 2 stages. This is the first part. The first 14 locations were selected as they are closest to the city, with the lowest car ownership and the greatest benefits for uptake. We've held back 10 upgrades in this stage due to consultation feedback, and will be considered in the future.
Kia ora koutou. We'll just do a quick summary of what we received from the community. So in total, we received 52 submissions and 4 comments from individuals and groups. There were obviously 2 consultations run for this project, a general consultation that lasted for a month as part of the Way Safer Streets SURF consultation, and a specific follow-up consultation for 3 weeks where residents and businesses were door-knocked with the plans that applied to them. The general Way Safer Streets consultation received 35 submissions, 51 upvotes, 2 downvotes, and 4 comments on the online map. The feedback included requests to upgrade Ferry Road, Tilford Street, and Linwood Ave bus infrastructure, to improve lighting and bus stops in the area, improve speed control measures, and fix roads in the area, among other requests. And I'd highly encourage you to read through those submissions because there's some real nuggets of gold. Regarding the specific address consultation, 244 properties were door knocked and received the plans that were relevant to them. The online form received 18 submissions, and themes included concern about parking loss, graffiti, vandalism, impact on personal safety, littering, noise, and requests to have rubbish bins at specific locations. 4 of the submitters were positive about specific upgrades, and 14 were against a specific upgrade. A number of changes have been made as a result of this consultation, including a seat instead of a shelter at 407 Chewham, shifting a proposed bus stop on St Asaph to allow for an approved property development, and due to feedback received, we are looking to reconsider relocating, upgrading, constructing, or removing 10 stops that were initially proposed as part of this phase 1. These will be revisited in the future, presumably after more consultation and a little bit more design work. And in terms of what's been left in the report for this decision, it's changes at 14 locations, including the installation of 11 shelters. There were no strong opposition to these plans, other than some concerns about parking loss.
Hi, I just wanted to address the concerns of the deputation of the bus stop on St Athers Street. So the existing bus stop has a bus box, and it has 6 metres of lead-in, no stopping, and that is currently insufficient for a bus to be able to pull up close and parallel to a curve. So usually we have a 12 metres of no stopping before our bus box. And the second issue is that the bus stop is located where there's a power pole that's hard up against the curb. And so that means that when a bus swings into that bus stop, it's unable to pull up close and parallel to the curb because it's got to avoid that power pole. And so those 2 issues create some accessibility issues for people in wheelchairs using the ramp on and off the bus, and it also disrupts other road users as well. For cyclists and cars heading down that road if that bus isn't able to pull up properly to the bus stop. The shelter location has been chosen because of there's a fire door located along that property, and so we have to make sure that that shelter doesn't block any fire door access to that property. However, given these things, there has been a new issue with a proposed development along that street, and council staff do need to have a relook at that particular bus stop, and so we would like to just table that resolution 9 and make sure that we can just recheck that and bring a report to the council for the next meeting.
Okey-doke. Thank you very much. Councillor Harrison-Hunt, please.
Kia ora. My first question is actually answered around what changes have been made as per the submissions, but the second one is around the conversion of one of the bus stops to a bench. Where does the money from that go if it gets reverted to just a bench instead of a protected?
Yeah, so this bus stop upgrade program is really a rolling program. We've got over 1,700 bus stops in Christchurch, and we've all got to bring them up to a level of standards to encourage our Christchurch residents to get the bus. So that money that was going to be spent on that shelter will just be put back into that program, and it'll be spent elsewhere on the bus network.
Okay, thanks.
Good question. Councillor Johansson, please.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. When I read through the submissions, a number of people question the patronage at these bus stops. And then when I see the submissions that people have made around wanting them in more high usage areas like Eastgate, like Ferry Road, what's our response to that? Do we have data that shows why these particular stops are the ones that are prioritised ahead of those other areas?
So this project is part of the SURF project, which concentrates infrastructure improvements in the east. we had to have a separate budget to address residents writing into council saying that they want a bus stop, and we look at those bus patronage numbers and we apply bus stop upgrades with high bus patronage numbers using that budget.
Right. So sorry, but what I'm trying to understand is obviously how do we select these bus stops if they have really low patronage when we've got other bus stops that have much higher patronage that aren't being done?
So we do look at bus stop spacings and the catchments and the bus routes that are going through there, and we acknowledge that bus patronage is low in that area, but to get more people getting on the bus, they need to feel safe, they need to have the shelters with the lighting, and they need to have a proper bus stop facility to encourage those people to get the bus. So this is a proactive program to increase bus patronage, and we've also got the other program which is more reactive.
I would also say that's well supported by the general submissions that we received as part of the Way Safer Streets program. People in the east saying that they wouldn't be willing to use the bus stops in their current condition. So,
and just a question for, I guess, for the, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask the staff here, but given what we heard yesterday in the briefing, and I don't know if that's public, I'm sort of wondering why we're considering this today when we've got a number of things that we need to consider in regards to the SURF program. So I don't know.
So can you clarify, Jacob, that this is a signed agreement?
The development of the design is part of the Schedule 1 signed agreement for the pre-implementation. So what you will consider on the 15th of November is what makes up the implementation phase. And without the designs being approved, we won't have a design that we can take forward into that implementation stage. So, yeah, we've still got to do it at some point if we want to deliver these.
Sorry, so just to be really clear, so if we approve the design today, that doesn't commit the government to the funding. It puts it in front of the government in terms of the funding request, which we've been told is currently they've paused the funding. So that is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
The bus stops have been paused as well in terms of funding from central government.
Yes, because they make up part of that Transport Choices program. Yeah.
Cool. Right. Yep. Good answer. Thank you. Okay. So one thing we have to do is that are the mover and seconder happy to take recommendation 9 out as you've moved and seconded?
You said you wanted to bring it to the next council meeting.
Yes.
Would it be easier on you guys if you just brought it back when you come back with all the other bus
Correct.
stops?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
when you mean.
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
You're
Yeah,
happy?
More than happy. Yeah.
Yep. That's very good. Okay, Katie. Righto. With that, I will. Everyone's happy. I will. Oh no, we've done questions. Haven't done debate. Okay, far away.
A couple of words and just say I'm really pleased to see this. It's always great when we can improve PT infrastructure and someone else pays. You know, where we go on a lot about what ECAN can do to support the bus network. Actually, this is something we can do, and if it's free, even better.
Okay. Any more, Councillor Johansson?
Well, unfortunately, this you know, I just think the timing of this report doesn't quite work. We've just heard yesterday that the SURF projects, we've got considerable financial pressures on them being delivered. We've got Waka Kotahi saying that they will not commit to the funding and that they're being paused. And even if they do go ahead, we've also been advised that there's a significant reduction in the funding. The problem I have with considering this in isolation of that change is, I guess, one of the points that the deputation made is, you know, if we've got limited funding, is this the best use of the funding to address those outcomes? And when I look at some of the submissions that we've received, it seems very clear to me that there's other areas of greater priority in terms of patronage and usage that would be better to consider, especially if we're not considering them today, because we've heard that there's more work to be done. So I can't support this today. I think the process is just, and it's unfortunate, but you know, we only just got the briefing yesterday that we need to consider this as a group in terms of what we choose to prioritise, because I don't think we're going to be able to do anywhere near the amount of SURF projects that government has funded us or agreed to for us to consider funding.
Okay, Councillor Harrison Hunt, please.
thanks team for bringing that to us. It looks phenomenal. The report looks great, and I'm really looking forward to supporting this. The things I wanted to talk about is actually around speed, and we always get talked. They say council works so slow, they move so slow, and tabling this actually is hindering us from actually getting that done. I'm really looking forward to supporting this and actually letting the transport team do their mahi. They've already done the work, and in terms of strengthening the east, public transport access needs to be happening all the time, particularly around Linwood. We've got all of those suburbs, Chewham Street, we've got all of these areas that need walkable catchments to public transport. It's really, really, really simple. And to think that we can debate this to actually stop our people in the most lower decile communities having access to appropriate bus stops. Riccarton's got all the flash ones. We've got really, really good infrastructure in Riccarton. The East and Linwood and all of those places around Central do not. So I'm very, very keen to support this, and I'll just leave it at that. Kia ora.
Councillor Cotter.
Yeah, well, I'm not prepared to leave it at that. I'm actually really continually surprised at Councillor Johansson always trying to pause and stop these things. That I think we've got to understand the amount of work that has already gone into this work. If you were to stop it and look at reprioritising across the city, we're going to burn up that investment, cost the organisation money. If you want to go forward and prioritise, but don't do it at the expense of all this work that's already gone into place. And I'm fully supportive of this, particularly it must drive those people mad having a lamppost right where the bus pulls up. And we're there to support accessibility, not hinder them. So I'll be supporting this today and thank the staff for all the work they've done on it.
Councillor Templeton.
If there's one thing that we've learnt over recent years is that having plans in place helps us get funding from central government. If we always deferred doing planning and signing off on things just in case funding didn't eventuate, we would never get anything done. I'm really pleased to be able to support this today, and I'm really pleased to be able to see bus upgrades that extend the amount of space that a bus has. I know that our community board recently had a deputation from a young woman who is in a wheelchair and had come to the board to ask for some bus markings to stop cars parking in the bus stop area, because she had an incident getting several incidents getting on and off the bus where the bus hadn't been able to pull up parallel to the curb. The platform therefore wasn't completely level, and one of these incidents ended up with her wheelchair coming off the platform and her ending up in hospital. Making sure that our city is accessible for all of our residents. 13% of adults in this city don't have a driver's license, and 7% of households don't have a car. Public transport is essential infrastructure. It's also much cheaper than owning and running a car these days. And making sure that that's accessible for everyone is really important. Continually delaying just because there's another priority that some people might like somewhere else will mean that we just grind to a halt as a city and we don't make any improvements.
Okay, with that, I will let Councillor McLeod talk a bit longer.
Hey, look, I share Councillor Cotter's concerns. I think it is really disappointing. We seem to be, as a council, heading down a path of actually, unless it's in my ward or unless it's perfect, then I won't vote for it, which I think is a shame. This is critical public transport infrastructure in the east side of Christchurch. Just because it may not be in your part of the east side of Christchurch doesn't mean it's not worthy of supporting. Most of it's not. And I think we need to also be cognizant we invest in PT infrastructure, not just where we want to see where patronage is high, but also where we want to see patronage grow. So I think that's really a really valuable thing to do. So with
that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you.
So an abstention. Thank you.
Yep. No. This is a trap. It's number 14, plan change 4. I could have said number 4, plan change 14, but that would be a bit messy. So, Mark, Councillor Templeton's happy to... Councillor Templeton, which one? The other one. Mark, far away, please.
Thank you. This decision, this report before you is to make a decision to make plan change 4 operative. Just as context, I'll describe the issues that this plan change sought to address, the process, and where it landed. So, just as context, this plan change arose from the significant growth in short-term accommodation. We saw a significant increase in the use of residential units for Airbnb type accommodation from 2016, and the plan change was to recognise that that activity that was emerging and to better manage the effects arising on amenity, character, and coherence. There was no recognition that in the district plan prior to this plan change of this type of activity, and as a consequence there were limitations on council's ability to approve it even where the effects could be managed. In terms of the process, it commenced more than 3 years ago, and it's been a matter that has attracted a high level of interest and with a diverse range of views. After a submissions and hearings process and subsequent decision by council, it was appealed to the Environment Court, and there were a number of parties representing those diverse views who participated in mediation, and agreement was reached between those parties to an outcome that sought to balance the need to enable Airbnb type activity but also better manage the effects of it. So in a nutshell, the rules as agreed to at mediation and resolved by the Environment Court, they are more enabling of this type of accommodation up to a limit of 60 nights per year in residential zones and up to 180 nights in rural zones. They make a distinction between hosted accommodation where the host is present and unhosted. And they seek the policy framework behind these rules seeks to manage the effects on character, coherence, and amenity of neighbourhoods where people have raised concern about such effects. And where it's inconsistent with those outcomes, there is a policy to avoid such impacts. So this is really a conclusion of a lengthy process, but our council, as council staff, we're satisfied with the outcome and recommend it's approved.
Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Templeton is happy to move it. And yes, Councillor McClellan's happy to second it, and fire away with your question.
It seems like I had to do that to get the question. Hey, just clarifying, now that we're at the end of the process with all the changes in Environment Court and everything like that, how does our regulatory regime stack up against what we have in the rest of the country in terms of its toughness, for want of a less punitive word?
So during the course of the process, we've done a comparison with other councils. There has been suggestions that our approach is more restrictive than other councils. We think it's balanced and is still enabling of the activity, at least up to 60 days, and is more enabling than what the operative district plan had before it. I think the site has been lost in the past by some criticising this as in saying it's the most restrictive by the fact that this outcome is far more enabling than what would have otherwise been the case without this plan change.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Templeton.
Just checking, and it differentiates between residential and rural. Where do the mixed use zones fit? They residential still, or
so within commercial and mixed use zones, visitor accommodation is permitted.
Okay.
So hotels, motels,
and Airbnbs.
Airbnb type accommodation
cool.
is.
I was just thinking about that new area in Plan Change 14, where that will sit. So that will just be permitted.
That's right.
Cool. That's great. Thanks.
Councillor Coker.
For those restricted discretionary activities, what are those like things that can be looked at to decide whether it's allowed or not?
So a restricted discretionary activity is one that can be granted or declined, but where the council's provided certainty of the effects that will be assessed, and they traverse matters including traffic and effects on neighbours of activities such as noise from outdoor activity on the site, and cover a broad range of matters in terms of amenity coherence.
You're right there, Mel. Done? Councillor Harrison-Hunt, please.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
I just want to ask about the resource consents and the turnaround time for this as such in terms of accommodation.
So it's about there's 12 resource consents already been approved in the last 3 months for visitor accommodation, not under these provisions but under the existing provisions. The turnaround times have been relatively quick, and the staff are preparing for an influx of applications if that does happen. So we're preparing for that situation should we get a whole number in.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That's questions. Have we got any debate? Nope. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. All those against? Thank you.
Guys.
Sorry, Aaron?
Can you register my vote against? Thanks, Phil.
Okay, so Councillor Goff. Yep. Thank you. So that is carried.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're now up to item number 15. Welcome, Brendan.
Happy to move.
Councillor Johansson's happy to move. And Councillor Templeton's happy to second. Have we? Right, we'll run our chance our luck. Is there any questions? Is there any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you, Kerry. Brilliant, Brendan. Moving right along. Council submission on the inquiry into climate adaptation. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, kia ora koutou. I guess we're hoping for similar treatment to what has just occurred. Essentially, you've seen the submission. It's due today, so we do not have a lot of room for movement with the content. So we're hoping we could take it as read, and happy to answer any questions.
Right. Councillor Harrison-Hunt is happy to move it and second it. Right, and Councillor Templeton's happy to do whatever else. Okay. So any questions, any debate? I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you, carried. Now moving on to the last one. Hearings panel report on the proposed replacement cruising and prohibited time on road bylaw.
Kia ora koutou. I want to recommend the proposed replacement cruising and prohibited times on roads bylaw 2023 to you today, along with the policy and 2 registers that relate to the bylaw. And the bylaw regulates in 2 different ways to help make our roads and communities safer. Number 1, it prohibits cruising on some roads, and number 2, it prohibits nighttime access to some roads to prevent antisocial vehicle-related activities. And if you refer to the report, it has a definition of cruising, and that means driving repeatedly in the same direction over the same section of a road in a motor vehicle in a manner that draws attention to the power or sound of the engine, or creates a convoy that is formed otherwise than in trade and impedes traffic flow. So there are quite a lot of roads where people do a lot of cruising, but this bylaw also is trying to address more the antisocial behaviour and many other things of the sort. The review of the bylaw was required by legislation, and it's nearly 10 years old. And staff reviewed the bylaw and the roads it regulates and proposed some improvements and additions, which included, but wasn't limited to, making enforcement of the bylaw clearer, adding nighttime restrictions on 16 roads in Hornby, Sockburn, Yoldhurst, Herwood, and removing restrictions on 1 road in Belfast, which had good support. The council accepted the recommendations of staff in June, and consultation ran from 27th of June to the 25th of July. Of that, we received 41 submissions from community boards, organisations, businesses and individuals, and we held a hearing on 13th of September, which I chaired, joined by my fellow panel members, Councillor Scandrett and Councillor MacDonald, who cheekily said that I'm going to be the chairperson for this hearings panel, which was my very first hearings panel, might I add, and chucking me into the chair role. Cheers. And there were 5 groups or people wanting to be heard on that day, and we considered the issues raised in the submissions, and we listened to those wanting to be heard, and we took advice from staff on those. Now, a lot of submitters talked about the disruption and damage caused by antisocial behaviour, losing sleep, kids being woken up, worries about crashes and damage to property. We heard from people living in Branston Street and Hornby, who are really looking forward to having some nighttime access restrictions put in at the industrial end of their street, and for some calmer and quieter nights. They're also going to be working closely with staff and elected members on bolstering anything else that they can do in regards to that. So I want to thank Kieran for his submission on that. Now, some submitters were opposed to the whole bylaw, but we know that the bylaw serves a purpose and really does help in some areas. So the reason why many submitters were opposed to it, because they wanted more restrictions that would have been a blunt instrument. There is a lot of misunderstanding about what the bylaw can do, and expectations are high, but staff advised us that there are legal limitations on what the bylaw can do, and that other laws already in place can address lots of wider issues raised by submitters. And that was the joy of the submissions, because we received a lot of feedback that actually helped in regards to other policies and other bylaws that we had in place. Staff advised us about the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act limitations, because the nighttime vehicle restrictions limit people's freedom of movement, and that's the biggest one. I'd note that the policy also proposed for adoption today sets out the type of roads where those nighttime restrictions can be applied, which is to industrial and rural city fringe roads, not residential or arterial roads, and there's a reason why. This is to make sure that we regulate in a reasonable and proportionate way and don't limit people's freedom of movement too much or unnecessarily. Nearly done, guys. Some community boards and submitters wanted more roads added to address concerns in the communities, particularly nighttime vehicle noise in residential areas and noise bouncing around in our hilly coastal suburbs and harbour settlements. But as you'll have seen in the report, nighttime access restrictions can't be put in place on arterial or residential roads, and the legal definition of cruising is limited to driving the same stretch of road in the same direction repeatedly, which means it doesn't apply to those long evening drives people are taking around and over the hills. So that wouldn't help address the concerns. We want to acknowledge the submitters from Blake Street and Belfast who took the time to submit. We proposed removing the nighttime access restrictions on this road, as residential development means prohibiting vehicle access at night is no longer appropriate, so we took that off. We know there are still issues in this area, but want to reassure people that even if the bylaw doesn't apply, there are other tools that the police can use. Residents should also continue to report incidents to the police as they are occurring. Now, I know some councillors asked about the Summit Road when this first proposal came to us, and we received a couple of submissions asking for nighttime access restrictions. Marie actually talked on that. Now, we received a reminder from staff and from Councillor Scandrett, who was on the hearing panel last time, about when this was last considered in 2018. And there was overwhelming opposition to restricting access to the Summit Road at night. It was so overwhelming that it actually broke records. There were 865 submissions with 545 opposed. So we haven't recommended looking at nighttime restrictions on the Summit Road in our report. Everyone loves seeing the Cashmere lights. Overall, most submitters were supportive of the bylaw and of the proposed roads, and the community boards that submitted, particularly in my own, were really pleased to see the updates to the roads regulated by the bylaw. I think about 9 of the 16 roads were in my board's area, all of them industrial or rural city fringe roads with antisocial activity. Now, the bylaw can only be enforced by the police, and staff worked with them on the review, so I'd like to thank the New Zealand Police for being involved in providing recommendations. The best advice for people in our communities when they're concerned about unsafe driving or nuisance vehicle noise is to call the police and to report incidents as they are occurring. whether the bylaw applies in that area or not. Now, there are lots of other tools the police have if they know where and when the issues are happening, and it's really important that we report that. I'd like to thank my fellow panel members, and I'd also like to acknowledge the mahi of staff, particularly the Transport, Legal and Policy staff, for their mahi. And also, I'd like to shout out to David Corlett, Tina Crocker for their support in my first hearings panel and as chair. And I'm going to get Councillor McDonald and Scandrick back for chucking me in that. And lastly, we, the panel members, are recommending to you, the council, that we adopt everything as proposed with no changes. Thank you very much.
Well done. Well done. Great first attempt. You will be remembered. Councillor Cotter.
Kia ora. Excellent report. Thank you very much. The only person you didn't thank was your wife. Just a question. Mine's on Blake's Road, and you sort of answered it, but a no cruising by the law, is that like no driving on the street at night time at all then? I thought it was don't display that behaviour that you talked about, which is, I'm asking why it was lifted in Blake's Road rather than leave it on there.
Yeah, I can bring staff to the table on that one.
Thank you.
Hi. So the Blakes Road part was a prohibited times on roads restriction, not the cruising restriction.
Oh, I
so the
see.
cruising is a behaviour. The prohibited times on roads part of the bylaw is prohibiting all vehicles under 3,500 kilograms. So it basically needs to be used very carefully only on roads where we don't expect people to be at night.
Could we change that to a no cruising?
No, it was
I thought you said it was
prohibited times on roads, and we're proposing to remove that because it's the development in the area has changed from being a semi-rural road to being a
Understand
residential road.
So you can't put a no cruising on there then?
It wouldn't help with no cruising because
I mean,
it doesn't
with
fit
noting, I know
the
that you spoke to
definition.
this about the policing of this, but we continually told that the police don't have the resourcing to do this, but they'll be disappointed, but I can understand the rationale. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. We have a mover and seconder. That's all done. We're not going to have any debate because everyone's happy. I'd like to put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. Now we're into...
Thanks, team.
Very well done. Very well done. Very good support for the young fella. We're now into karakia time. So... Kia waha tatahu, kia watia, kia ara, kia turi, ai, kia turi, ai, homie, hurie, tahi, e. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance.